Welcome back, everyone, to Lesser Known Operators. No special shoutouts this week, no links, and no plugs. My guest this week is Alex, a Green Beret, did his job, went on to be part of his community. He wanted this episode to be something that he could show his family and friends, to be a memento of what he did while he was in service, and nothing more. So, without further ado, thank you for listening, and enjoy the show. Alex, welcome to Lesser Known Operators. Thanks for coming on, man. My voice, it switches over from I don't know what I'm talking about to nice and soothing, and let's get into things.
I know. Is this therapy or an interview?
Well, I hopefully, like I said earlier, we're on back to the original camera, so hopefully things don't go awry digitally today. I like yours. You said something about my setup. I like yours there. What you got some books though? Are those just for show to let people know that you can read, or were you actually what are you reading these days?
So in terms of what I'm reading, I have three young daughters, 11, 9, and 6. And so what am I reading right now? I'm reading what they're reading. You know, they get assigned books and literature in school, so I read that. And before this, well, the year before last, I homeschooled my girls. And so this is kind of I used to think of it as like our home library / I mean, if I could show you, like we have, models that we've built and airplanes and, different kinds of books. And, it's all for them, really, most of it. I did dust. I had to.
You have guests coming over. You had to dust
the
a bit.
car right there was all covered in dust, so I just, I took a feather duster to stuff. But this is generally kind of, this is just where we do a lot of stuff here. Really, we have games and different things. We live in northeastern Oregon, so the winters can be kind of arduous, and we end up being inside quite a little bit. And so, this is like our life lab. I've got a T-Rex skull. That's actually from a real juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex imprint that was made, a casting, I guess. Just stuff for the girls to explore and play with and figure out.
All the little trinkets, I didn't see that there. That's pretty badass, actually. Now
He's
I
actually
get
telling
me
me
some sort of.
He's telling me what to say. Just kidding.
I mean, you never know, but. The reason I asked that, I guess, shout out, one of the things behind this is I'm getting to meet all these cool people, right? And you were a team sergeant, obviously. So I got to recommend, shout out to Tom Kelly, who literally wrote the book, A Team Sergeant's Handbook. So I've been recommending that to everybody lately. And it's cool about this, because I meet somebody, it's like, yeah, I support you. I'll give you a shout, whatever. You want to come on and talk about it? So that's cool. That's why I asked there. He's going to be coming on Saturday and record an episode. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, so he's to see it. If it's
he's
the
a 10th
Tom
group
Kelly,
guy as well.
Yeah.
It is the Tom Kelly.
I know Tom Kelly.
Really?
Yeah. So I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. He's going to come on. And I'm excited about it. I'm leafing through it. I bought it kind of sight unseen and then get it here to the house. And as soon as I opened it up, I was like, I can't believe somebody put all this together. Like, this is, you read an Army TM or a field manual and you go, this must have taken some work. But it sounds like it is good, everything in there. But Jesus Christ, to sit down and write all that shit out, good for him.
I think it's a great service because, in SF, that's what you want to be when you grow up, right? I mean, I don't know anybody who went into special forces who was like, you know what, someday I'm going to be a sergeant major in the Green Berets. No. If you are exceptionally lucky, and if you work really hard, and if you are humble, and if you pay attention, and if you just, you're good at what you do, you're good with your guys, you give a shit, you might get a team. And I think it's the greatest honor in the regiment, in my opinion, to be given an A team. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, you gain more of an understanding it too when you're a junior guy and you go, this is the pinnacle, right? To have that team and then to lead that team and have the guys, respect you and things like that. I don't know. Experiences may vary though, because I went to a team and I would say we were a bad team, and I got injured right away. Went to the B team, and that team kind of got disbanded and cut up and moved around the company, and then things were a little different. So my experience, and I feel bad because that's not a one-off thing. I feel bad for guys that do go to a team that's not up to what it could be, because a master sergeant Green Beret should be the pinnacle of an NCO in the military. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. Um, you have to master all previous tasks, right? And but at the same time, though, uh, you know, you I was very lucky. I was exceptionally lucky. I had some amazing team sergeants over the years, and some of the things that they said to me still resonate in my head, even in my, when I got out and retired and became a civilian. I could still hear their voices, like, Alex, dude, take a breath, you know, and remember, you can't manage people as easily as you can manage the expectation.
Like that.
Okay. You know, just little things like I was a young trooper, and I walked out of a building, and I was very quite cavalier, like I think we all are when we're young. And I just walked out of I don't know, is it some headquarters building, maybe up the company level, and we had it was at 110, and there was a Corps Support Command headquarters right next door, and so there was some high visibility. There was a lot of visibility on us, just even walking out the door. It's kind of like being at Bragg, really. And I walked out, and I didn't even bother to put my headgear on. Right, young E6, I know everything. I don't care. I've earned my right to break the rules. Right, kind of philosophy. And the company sergeant major opened his window, and I was walking with another guy, and he did have his headgear on, and he said, "Hey, jackass," and then he used the other guy's name. He said, "Put your goddamn hat on," right? And he turned around and looked like, "Dude, I have my hat on," But I then checked myself. So There's a lot of ways to lead. There's indirect. There's very laissez-faire. There's very authoritarian. There's very there it can be quite gnarly, but I think having the wisdom and the expertise to switch styles when it's necessary is one of those key characteristics that I enjoyed, actually. If it didn't have to be hardcore, then it needn't be. You know what I mean? Some guys were just like full gas all the time. So like, God, like I can't even hardly keep up with this guy. And some guys were like, "Oh yeah, man, it's cool." You could tell kind of what generation they were from, or they came up through the 70s, because I got into SF. I went through SF assessment and selection in when was that? 1989. It was one of the first classes. Hotter than hell. But anyways, you could see some of the more experienced SF dudes who'd come up through the 70s were really kind of laid back. Then you run into a guy who had a history with Det A in Berlin, and he was a whole different guy, very different leadership style. So it was fascinating to come up underneath a couple of very extraordinary team sergeants. So I was very lucky in that regard to have all good team sergeants. I didn't have any. I had seen some, on other teams there. Not often, but from time to time, there's like this one team. It's got a little bit of dysfunction going on in there, you
Yeah,
know.
they're supposed to get weeded out, though, right? It's not
Well,
supposed. Sergeant Major's supposed to nip that in the bud right away.
it's you don't. Maybe you hear about it, but you don't really see it because if the op tempo is what it is, and how it is, like seriously, when I was at 110, my team would be out doing what we do, and then let's say I'm on 01015, and then I wouldn't see the guys on 012 for like a year because they were doing their thing and we were doing our thing, and maybe you ran into each other in the hallway, maybe we were just so busy. And I remember seeing I had a guy who lived across the hall from me, in the senior enlisted billets, and I didn't see him for a year and a half, just because he was busy at schools, different things, and I had, and so.
Yeah, that is one thing. Even in a company, right? You're in the same hallway with these people, feet apart, but you might have no interaction with them. And I didn't really gain any understanding. When I went to the B team rather quickly after I got hurt, but when you're on a team, you don't know anything about the rest of the company at all. And then you go to the B team and you learn what the rest is going on and where everybody is. And then you go to battalion and you see what the rest of the companies are doing. And then you learn that group doesn't know what it's doing either. And if everybody's just trying to run around with their head cut off.
I was kind of lucky in that regard. I know a lot of team guys look at, doing time on a B team or working up the C team. I had these windows of opportunities to work in these places, not for very long, but enough. Uh, and then all the way up through a TSOC, it's Special Operations Command Pacific. And you don't really see when you're on ODA, you don't see your place in the universe, really. I mean, you see the tactical, and there's certainly an effort to connect you with the strategic, of course. But to get up to a TSOC, to a Theater Special Operations Command, and to see, for example, I don't know what they're using now, but probably something similar to the Theater Security Cooperation Plan, and how that planning cycle works, and what are the priorities of effort for U.S. SOCOM versus the different groups, and what's our engagement strategy with each of the different nations, whose priorities, the ambassador's priorities, and that I think it's incredibly useful to have an opportunity to see the 30,000 foot level, because it lends so much more meaning and value to the sort of backstory. You're not just a guy behind the iron sights or a guy behind an aim point. You're more focused and oriented into what's going on in the bigger world, and what are our national strategic priorities. So it's really useful. I would suggest that, if there are any team dudes are watching this, if you have an opportunity to get a shot at, going to a TSOC or working one of these higher headquarters, I wouldn't stay there, but it's a good view. It will certainly enrich your view of the world. And I was lucky because I didn't pick up a team until after I had worked at Special Operations Command Pacific and performed well there for them. And then, when I got back, my command was like, yeah, you're ready for a team. And so I became a team sergeant.
More experience is never going to be a detriment in your career, like ever, right? Because everybody thinks, oh, I don't want to go do that job. It's going to be shitty. But if you do a good job at a job that people don't want to do, that kind of stands out more than just doing a good job at the job that everybody wants to do.
Agreed. I know it's kind of cliche, right? I mean, Jim Carrey made a very funny movie called Yes Man, right?
Mm.
He was a sort of, narrow-minded, short-viewed guy working in a bank, and through life's circumstances, he had to adjust his philosophy on how he approached his life, and he became a yes man. And I will say that being a yes man myself, like, look, early on as an 18 Delta SF medic, we're shorthanded always. And, that's just par for the course. Team be lucky to have two medics on it. And they cross load medics all the time to meet, requirements for different activities, let's say. And as an SF medic, I was getting approached a lot, even as a junior medic, like, hey, we need a guy who can do this, or, could you want to go do this? Or, hey, we're headed up to Norway. We're going to do a thing, or we're going to do a scout swim. So I very quickly became a yes man, and I was busy all the time, and I never knew what was going to happen. It wasn't always glorious. It's like, hey, man, you want to come to JRTC with us? Sure. Okay. And it sucked. But, it's like, hey, we're going to go do this gig with the Kampfschwimmer Company, the German SEALs up in Eckernförde. What do you say? All right. And it was fantastic. A great trip. So just say yes to everything and be open-minded, be willing to grow. It's fantastic.
Yeah, that was, it's like the opposite of when I say what I have a question later. It's like, what was the best piece of advice you got in your military career? And mine is like an inverse, right? Mine, the worst piece of advice I got in my career turned out to be what like framed everything. It was like the best. It was, don't volunteer for anything. Don't stand out here. And I said, well, I'm not going to fucking do that. First, I got to get out of here because I could tell this place sucks when I got to my first unit. So I went to selection right away. And as soon as because you were in a regular unit, as soon as you go to selection, everybody knows who you are right away, all the way up through the commander. Because, why does this guy want to get out of here? And then you have to sit down with explain yourself away, even though you signed the paper. I'm going. Was that the case when you were a junior guy? Because you said you went to selection, right?
I did. Yeah.
What was that process like?
Well, just to reciprocate the previous ask, I would say that, for people who were, for folks who are thinking about going to SF, I think it's a mistake to and I've seen it a couple of times, make this giant announcement, like, I'm going to be a Green Beret, and then you come back from SFAS with your tail between your legs, demoralized, ruined, spent, injured, and everybody's looking at you like, what happened? Oh, you didn't make it. Advice: don't tell anybody you're going to SFAS. Don't tell anybody. It's nobody's business but yours. That is a personal journey. It's a gut check to see if you are trainable. And SFAS is its own thing. I didn't know much about it when I went there. I didn't know what to expect. They didn't brief us, we get our instructions written on a whiteboard or whatever, or just be out in formation with your ruck at this time and this time. Pay attention, follow instructions, do what the hell you're told. But I wouldn't tell anybody I was going. I didn't. I didn't really. Well, I didn't really have anybody to tell back then. I don't know if it makes any sense. I was on my own. I was like on my own track, and I would say don't tell anybody you're going to SFAS. Just go there and do it for yourself. Do it to be part of the regiment. Do it because that's what you want to do, and become unfucking stoppable. And then when you get back, okay, fine. I'm going to the Q course. I'm PCSing. Surprise! I'm leaving. So
There we go.
Yeah, time to go. So
I got to my unit and we were in the field, and I went to headquarters. They assigned me to a company, and then they said, okay, you're going to the field tomorrow. So I went out and found my unit. They dropped me off in the Humvee, and I would just come from basic and AIT, and Sergeant Major walks out with some white Oakleys, which, as you know, are not, as far as I know, are not regulation
No.
anywhere in the regular Army, and just gave us this, what I considered just a terrible speech to the new people coming into your unit. I don't even remember it. All I remember is, what the fuck is this guy? This is not what I expected. We finish up the field problem, just a mess. Get back to the unit, told my E5, I'm going to the library to the briefing for special forces. And then he laughed. He's like, yeah, I got you, man. Just, we'll see you tomorrow. So I went, and that was it. He didn't care. He even said to me at one point, he's like, you don't belong here, man. Just get out of here. Just do your best. And that was it. You know, I came back from selection after I hurt myself, and people don't know if you quit or you fail or whatever. I was limping around, but you don't know if that's so. It's all the same response. Oh, you didn't make it. Well,
Yeah.
I was already signed up back to go before they could even do anything about it. So, but
I,
yeah, whatever.
I don't think people talk enough about what a powerful teacher failure can be. You know, I was lucky, I think, in a certain respect. I didn't get injured. I mean, my feet were hamburger, of course. I had a big
Terrible.
strip of raw meat in my lower back where my ruck had rubbed me raw, and I don't think I had any meat between my legs at all. But uh, uh, forgot what I was saying. You're gonna
Failure.
edit this part out, right? This is where he has an Alzheimer's moment. Anyways, I just so I was lucky enough to get through on the first try. Oh, I was sitting next to a guy at the end, and you know how it is. You sit in this room, and they say, "Okay, when we call your roster number out, please step outside." And you don't know, are
You don't
they
know anything
paying
the whole time. You
attention?
don't know
Did
anything.
I fail?
Yeah.
Conveniently, you're in a church, you know, and so they're calling off these roster numbers. And I remember I was sitting next to this dude, and he was, I swear to God, he was like this. And I was like, dude, relax, man. I mean, he's like, this is my third time through. And I was like, wow. And I was thinking, like, man, if I don't get picked, I ain't never coming back. You know, I was a forward observer. I had a good job. I loved what I was doing. I was working with good, good guys, small teams, you know, working up and around or maybe past the flot, you know, front line of troops. And I was happy there. But this guy was like, oh, he was in deep meditation. He was praying and all that. And then the last guy left out the door. And this guy said, congratulations. And like the room erupted. And he made it. But I had to admire him. 3 times through? Oh, whew, man, that's a glutton for punishment right there. I mean, it was brutal. And we went through in the summertime. You know, you could feel the heat coming off that sand at Fort Bragg. Like, it's like walking on hot glass. Crazy.
It's commitment, right? Because it takes a capacity for abuse to even get through all of the Q course that, everybody's got a different perspective of it, or, of why they, my reason is not comparable to your reason. But we all have similar traits and shit of why we want to get to this same goal in the end. So you said you had a good job at your unit and you liked what you were doing.
Yeah.
What was the decision like in your head to go sign up for? Because selection was new at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah. um, I, the decision to go SF was made when I was about 11. I, if I did well in school, my dad was really good about rewarding performance. And he was a veteran himself. And, he'd been in the Air Force and had worked, doing ground tracking for the Apollo program. I mean, he was a very proud American and proud of our military. And and my grandfather and my great grandfather had served in World War I and World War II. So we had a rich a positive military history in the family. And so on one occasion when I did well in school, I was younger, my dad took me and he put me in a glider and they towed me and a pilot up and I got a glider ride. I don't know if you remember the huge wingspan gliders. And that was like life-changing for me. It was amazing. And like who would have thought that up? My dad, of course. And on a different occasion, my dad was a big supporter of the University, California, Santa Barbara, and I did well ish. And so he took me to a basketball game. And after the game, we're at the President's Club. Back in those days, the players would play the game and then they would have a quick shower, put on suits and stuff, and they would go to the Chancellor's Club or the President's Club or whatever. And so I was in there with my dad, and he's at one point in time, we're in this big crowded room, and he kind of bent down and pulled me close to him, and he said, "Do you see that guy over there?" And I looked, there was a guy, in full dress uniform, and he said, "That guy, that's Colonel Alexander. He's the professor of military science here. And that man is a Green Beret. And nobody in his room is good enough to kiss his ass. Not even me." And I was like, all righty then. So, I had never seen my dad show anybody that kind of deference. I mean, it was very profound. And it resonated with me, and I thought a lot about it. And, as I grew and, went through school and stuff, it really struck me. And then I saw of course, John Wayne and the Green Berets, and I kind of knew I wanted to be the guy in the room that people would go like, that guy. It wasn't that I was after the respect. I wanted to have earned that kind of respect. And I wanted a life where I was pulling that kind of activities and those kinds of, clearly he'd been doing something worthwhile for my dad to take notice. My dad, he didn't
It
show
is
any.
one of those things, right? It just it says more about you than you'll ever say about yourself. That old recruiting poster for special forces from
Yeah,
the 60s or 70s, right?
it's true. But I wanted to be involved in the stuff that gleaned that kind of respect. Does that make sense? It wasn't
Yeah.
that I wanted to be the guy in the room. I wanted to be the guy in the room who had earned his way into that suit, into that position, into that thought, into that respect. That was the life I wanted. I wanted to get to that point. And so, and that was like foundational for me. It really was. And it drove literally all my decisions. I joined the military, I think in the delayed entry program at 16. My parents signed. And now that I'm older, and I have kids, I'm like, now hold on, man. You guys signed a paper that let me go off to the military, and you signed it when I was 16? What? It seems such a stretch, but I'm Gen X, right? So
I've heard of 17. I had never heard of 16.
I signed at 16. I could ship at 17. And it was a delayed entry program. So you had to wait a year. So basically it was like a pre-contract. And then, then you contracted out and then you left. And I contracted to be a 13 Fox fire support specialist, which honestly at 16, I thought was being a firefighter. But I told the recruiters, I said, I want to be a special forces. I want to be a Green Beret. That's what I want to do. And back then they had these giant laser discs, in the recruiting office. And I think I watched
about the laser disc.
Yeah, I watched the laser disc like 20 times. And I was like, yeah, that's from, like, these guys all speak languages, and look, there's parachutes and, guys coming out of the water with guns. And I was like, that's for me. And so they were like, well, here's a great feeder MOS for you. 13 Fox, Forward Observer, Field Artillery Forward Observer. Fire Support Specialist. And I was like, okay. I don't know what that is, but okay. If it'll get me where I want to go, then let's do it. And then I contracted as an unassigned ranger, and that was the best that I could get at the time, and that's what I did, uh, mostly, mostly.
Did anything come of the unassigned ranger portion?
No, actually, it didn't, because after I finished basic AIT and then jump school, I and two other guys from the same class got pulled into the commander's office at RIP, and he said, "Sorry, fellas, we just don't have any slots for 13 Foxes in the regiment right now. So we're going to save you the time and the hassle. We're not even going to put you through RIP. You're unassigned ranger, so we don't owe you anything. And so not even ranger school. So guess what? You're up for worldwide reassignment." So that was it. That was it. I was never officially part of the ranger regiment, and I stood on ranger territory for about 15 minutes. That's it. And then I was gone.
Was
Off
the
to the
extent of
2nd Armored
that?
Division in Germany. So bad.
Well, so you're 18 years old and you show up to your first unit in Germany. What was that like?
Oh, man. Imagine Private E2 showing up at an armored division with jump wings. You know, they were like, "Who the hell are you?" And, I had just come from, basic AIT, jump school, and then I ended up in the 2nd Armored Division in the Cold War. And these were tankers, infantry fighting vehicle guys. There was it was cold. I was up in the far north, actually up in the British sector. We were the northernmost American combat brigade in Germany. So think the Danish border wasn't that far away. Hamburg wasn't far away. And it was cold. It was gray. I was a teenager, and I was with a bunch of professional drinkers who really just went to the motor pool and back, did PMCS and filled out 2404s on their heavy equipment, and went back to the barracks, and they drank a lot. And then they would go to the NCO club and the EM club on the weekend, and they would fight. They'd end up on the blotter. It wasn't a place for a young high-speed dude like me. The winds just fell out of my sails in that place.
Did you
Because I
know
was
you were a
around all
high-speed dude at that time?
I thought I was.
Yeah.
I really
Were
did.
you in reality?
Oh yeah, yeah, I was. I was a high performer, and and I was very I was very rigid. I mean, I'd come from basic training, so yes, sergeant, no sergeant, all that sort of stuff. And then there's these guys sitting around, these tankers with their guts, and they're like, "Dude, you need to chill out. Come on," And it was really hard for me. It almost ruined me, to be honest with you. And I was culture shocked, and I was in Germany, and I didn't have any money. Privates don't make they don't make anything. And that was a hard 3 years for me. Met a German girl, never really, had a serious girlfriend up to that point. And, that went all, oh, love, don't bring a German girl home, they said. And they were right. And, but,
How would they know from experience?
yeah. So I was a good performer there. I did my job very well. I got promoted through E4. I was there for 3 years, ended up getting married to that girl and had a baby. And, but I was still like, I never let go of the goal. I held on to that so tight, and it saw me through so much. Like, I'll do anything to get back on track. I knew I was off track. I started to drink like them, and it was just ruinous. And so, uh, it was cool though, because it was 1989 when I was leaving there, and the wall came down, Cold War ended. And that was a really scary thing because, you know, uh, we had Soviet Union, the DDR, the East Germans, the Soviet bloc countries all facing us, ready for high intensity conflict. And then we had this moment of absolute instability. And I remember being in MOP 2 or MOP 3, probably MOP 2, in, in an armored vehicle in the motor pool, like literally ready to roll because something was going to go down. Who could flinch, right? Who's going to flinch first? I think all of UCOM was on alert. And, mercifully, it didn't go down. We were able to stand down fairly quickly. It wasn't like all off, but it was over. It was absolutely over. And within 2 weeks of the wall coming down in Berlin, and this beginning of the reunification, all the East Germans were just pouring into West Germany at the time because they weren't sure, like, well, they might change their minds, so we're out of here, right? And I remember I was on a bus and I was going to Frankfurt to fly out of Germany for good. I had reenlisted. I wanted a duty station of choice to Fort Campbell, not because I wanted to be with the 101st, but because I knew 5th Special Forces Group was there, and I had heard that you could sign in to the unit before you go to the to the transition place, the replacement detachment, whatever. If you could sign in there, and then you could have OJT until they could send you to the Q course. And I was like, I got to do that, So I actually reenlisted just to go to Campbell. I had like specifically, I'm going to do that. And I was on this, duty bus down to Frankfurt to get on an airplane and be done with the place permanently, with wife and baby in tow. And the entire right lane of the Autobahn, this is like a 7-hour drive. The entire right lane was full of these little tiny East German Trabi cars, piled high with furniture and luggage, and they were partying at every rest stop. Every gas station was like champagne festival, and they were fleeing communism. Like, I've never seen anything like it since. I've seen a lot of, let's say, footbound, internally displaced people or refugees, but in the years ensuing. But in that particular case, they had everything they owned, and they were hauling ass for freedom. And that was amazing. It was really amazing. And then, of course, I got on a flight and I went to Fort Campbell. And I
So you're
tried
saying they weren't happy with their communist past, they were leaving and they were trying to get away from it?
you know, history teaches us nothing if you don't remember, right? Uh, we have short memory, It's an interesting thought. We Westerners are so distracted with everything, with the screens and media and blah, 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 and all that stuff, tech and everything that's going on. But in other countries where they don't have all of this, they have a long, rich tradition of talking and engaging with each other and sitting around the fire. And, they talk about things that happened 500 years ago, like it happened yesterday. So we have a short, narrow view. And I think sometimes culturally that hurts us. We forget too much, too fast, too distracted.
There's always something new coming up in the news cycle every couple minutes.
Yeah.
You could look at, people early on asked me about Ukraine. And I went, well, they were the Soviet Union just 35 years ago. So, I mean, can we trust somebody blindly? Maybe, probably not. I don't know. Glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, it's interesting because, most people, they don't read. The information is there. Read. You know, why did the Soviet Union create the Warsaw Pact countries? Well, gosh, I don't know. Maybe it's because they've been invaded by the West so many times. Bonaparte did it. The Nazis did it. Millions of dead Russians, thanks to the West. I don't begrudge them that at all. If they're like, well, NATO was stood up to counter the Soviet Union. Well, when the Soviet Union went away, why didn't NATO? I mean, I'm not for or against Russia. I'm not. I'm just talking about what happened, and
Well,
I'm
they
not
have quite
saying
the
they did
history.
what's right, but I'm saying maybe I understand.
Yeah, they. I mean, these people that lived in the Soviet Union, most of those people are still alive. Like it's not that
Yeah,
long ago.
right.
And when people would ask me, oh, or say something, oh, Russia's having losses or this, I said, no, they don't give a fuck about 1 million people dead, 2 million people dead. Russia would sacrifice every single living person just to further their political goals. They've demonstrated that throughout history. They will do whatever it takes.
Incurring great losses is very Russian. It really is. Um, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts, and I mean that's very contemporary stuff, and not all that related to me today per se. But
Well, the history part is right. So
well,
we go back into that history of the Berlin Wall falling. Did you know that you were in that little part of history at the time when you were there?
no,
Like how big it was?
no, no. It's like so many other things in life. The greatness of a moment you don't even realize until it's a thing made known by its opposite. So it happens a lot in life. The grass is greener, or gosh, that was a good team. I didn't really appreciate that team I was on until I was not on it. Or, you know, no regrets, right?
Well, not even one letter. But that's kind of what SF life is, right? You're go, 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 and you don't realize that the good old days are happening right now. And then you look back and go, oh, maybe I should have taken my phone out of my pocket and taken a picture. My biggest regret, I have no pictures of anything. Ugh.
I tried to be in the now, and I did know that I was, like for example, when I was in Germany with 110, I had been in Germany before, and one of the things that I learned from my first trip over was that, I was surrounded by genuine European history and art and culture and food and all this stuff. And what did I do my first 3 years? Nothing. I threw myself into a bottle of whiskey at the enlisted club with all the other jackasses. What a waste of time. What a missed opportunity. The opportunity cost of that tour was staggering. But when I got to 110, no, not this time. I took a class from University of Maryland in art history at Panzer Barracks because I wanted to know, what the hell am I looking at? Oh, that's a Romanesque church. That's a Gothic church. This is that. That's that. I took a ballroom dancing class with my buddy Terry and two other guys just because we were like, you know what? We're going to be cultural kamikazes. We took a ballroom dancing class.
Kamikazes die.
Oh my God, we saw Madam, Miss Saigon at at the Schloss Halle or whatever it was. We went to the ballet. We toured art museums. We enriched ourselves culturally at every opportunity, and it made the trip and the tour phenomenal. It was fantastic. Later, of course, we have to sustain language training, right? So every year we got to go to the Foreign Language Training Center in Europe, which is down in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is glorious, wonderful little ski town in Bavaria. And there's the Marshall Center. And so we would do that, and we would ski, and we would do stuff. We would, go up to Munich and go to the opera, and, it's just And it opened a lot of doors. It really did. It enriched our time and the whole experience of being in Europe. I don't feel like I missed anything. I would drive down to, we'd have a weekend off, and I would just jump in my piece of shit car and drive on down to Milan, go have coffee, or drive over to Strasbourg, France, and have breakfast. Spend the weekend, and if I had a 4-day weekend, I would go to Vienna, or I would drive my like a madman, driving my car down the Autostrada to get to. I'd park my car. What's the name of that base? Is it Derby Barracks, or where the 173rd is now, right outside of Venice?
Vicenza?
Vicenza. I would park my car at Vicenza, get on the train, and go to Venice and spend a day and a half or 2 days just taking it all in, man. Like, wow, this is the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, and look, there's all the artwork on the ceiling from Jacopo Tintoretto. Like, wow, take it in, man.
I know what you mean there. Because the field artillery unit I was in when I was a private, they would just bounce from Fort Sill to Korea and back, right? And a lot of the guys had stories that they would get in trouble so much that they would never leave their room, or they would either just get in trouble, do extra duty, and then stay in their room, or some combination of that, and they wouldn't see anything. But when I went to Korea, I was, an SF guy, and we lived down south. I had a blast. If I was off work, I was gone. I was somewhere out seeing something, going partying with the locals or the expats and things like that, trying to get the most out of it. But I always think back now about, there was people just sitting up there at Camp Casey playing video games because they couldn't not get in trouble, and they had a terrible time. I always say experiences may vary when you go to Korea. But are you glad you had that waste of a 3 years? Because you wouldn't have learned that lesson, and we know that experience is hard to come by. If you would have gone without that experience when you went the second time.
Exactly. Even though things may not turn out the way you want, so what? That was the springboard or the failure or the whatever that's going to get you where you got to go. And there's something to learn in all of it. What a treat to be in Europe in the 90s. It was awesome. Like, and I had teammates that made it terrific. Terry and John and Ted and a couple of other guys that were willing to go do that shit with me. Like, go to language school, and then we would have a week in country. I was a Czech linguist at the time. I already spoke German fluently, and I had I had like a 2+2+ rating in Czech. But then we got to go to Prague, and they had an apartment for us in the Smíchov district where it was complete immersion, absolutely brilliant. And being in the Czech Republic back in the early 90s, the wall hadn't been down all that long. There weren't a lot of Americans there, and I'd get a little homework assignment like, you will go to a town 1 hour outside of Prague, and you will take the train, and, you do this, and you're going to have a questionnaire for you, and what's the name of the mayor, and this and that. We want you to find these things out. And okay. So I had to go read the train schedule. I had to get on a train. I had to talk to people. I had to, it was a Saturday, and I took a train to this little town called Smíchov. And I got off the train. I was a stranger in a strange land. And, I just started walking from the train station into downtown. I got a checklist of things. I got my little homework assignment here. And I ended up meeting the mayor. And the mayor took me out to lunch. It was a Saturday. He was in his office putting. Never forget it. And the door was open, and I knocked on the door. Nobody then, and he was like, what? And we started to talk, and amazing. And then he took me out to lunch, and, told me everything. He was an electrician during the Cold War, and, he's the first elected mayor since the wall came down and since they had freedom, and he had never met an American before. And I was the first American apparently to walk into their town. And so they waltzed me over to the local school. I like, you know how it is, like in a little tiny village, like you get on a phone and you call a couple of people. It's like, come on, everybody, there's an American here, you know? And so they yell, come on down to the school, bring all the kids from the English class. So I gave a talk, an impromptu talk at the elementary school for all these kids that were learning English. Fantastic.
That's
Dude,
pretty badass.
never do
I
that
mean,
if I wasn't an SF. No
no,
way.
I mean, I say, because guys will be on here and they'll tell me they'll just throw out all of these stories as if it's like a throwaway comment. But the stories, they're unbelievable things that civilians or even regular army would never do. And it's just like a normal day.
Never in
Yeah.
my wildest dreams. Ever. I couldn't have dreamt this stuff up. And that's like 2% of all the stuff that I got to do. The people I got to meet, places I got to go. And I was getting paid to do it. I was stupefied much of the time. Yeah, I mean, there was some grunt moments, some things that are better left in the past, deployments to Afghanistan and wherever else. And yeah, okay, those things happen. But I really focus the memories that I keep most readily available in my frontal lobe or wherever you store those memories is all this amazing shit I got to do. I had to, when I was in Smiekoff, the mayor called his daughter, who was stunning, and she gave me a tour of the local castle. And it was a Saturday afternoon, and it was just her and I, and she was touring me through this castle, and they had rugs in there that were, older than my country. And I was walking around on them, because, this is Czech Republic back in the day. In America, you've got these stanchions and everything's behind glass, and, you're not really, you're kind of distant from that history. I sat down on this bed that was full of straw that had been around since the 12th century or something like that. It's still like, wow, unreal. So yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal. I have a lot to think about.
To get to that point, now we're leaving as a specialist, going back to the States. And were you able to execute your plan at Fort Campbell like you hoped in your mind?
I tried.
As we had said earlier, selection is now a thing. So
yeah.
How did your plan come to fruition?
Arrived before I signed in to the replacement detachment, I think it's 21st or something like that. I went down to 5th Group. And at the time, there was, I believe, 1st Battalion, 5th Group. I'll never forget it. I was like, I got to go in there because, there's the big sign next to the road, and then there's the commander's name, and then there's the CSM's name, right? And I'll never forget it. The CSM's name was John Rambo. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. Because, I've seen Stallone, right? Rambo, really? So I was all Twitter pated and, little nervous, very nervous. And I literally walked in to the CQ and I said, I want to report in. And he said, okay. So he took me to the Sergeant Major's office and I met Sergeant Major Rambo. And he asked me a couple of questions and he was like, man, I'd love to help you. I can't help you. We don't do OGT anymore. We don't do any of that stuff. We used to could, but I can't do it anymore. There's this new program called assessment and selection. So you're going to have to go sign in to the 101st. Then you're going to have to put in a packet. Then you're going to have to, sorry, buddy. And I was like crestfallen. So I signed in to the 101st and reported to, an artillery battalion, 320th, which is a far cry better than being in an armored unit. I was back at least with light infantry dudes, light fighters. I was pretty content there. They sent me to air assault school. Okay. toughest 10 days in the Army. Maybe not. And, passed it pretty handily. I became the unit air assault NCO. And, I tried to do the best I could while I was there. And I put my packet in and I went to SFAS and I passed. First time go, went back to the unit. And then Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait and Gulf War I Desert Shield was on. And we got alerted and I was not going to the Q course anymore. Orders got suspended, locked down, and we deployed to the Middle East right after that. So I had to put my Green Beret dreams on hold again, But that's life, right? Just keep trudging on that goal, and life will happen to you in the meantime, I guess.
Yeah,
So
the Army it doesn't give a shit about you at all. It's just going to do what it does. You have to gently guide your path if you want to make it your own. Uh, that's
yeah,
continual
sure.
throughout your career. You have to keep doing your best because it's going to push you one way. It's going to lie to you at another juncture, and it's going to make you do things. But yeah, if you don't keep at it, it'll just pigeonhole you somewhere you don't want to be.
I didn't see any sort of deceptive uh, kind of steerage from the Army for me. You got to take what comes, right? I mean, and all the commanders and NCOs that I had dealt with up to that point were really quite matter of fact. Like, hey, man, we don't have a spot for you in the regiment. We're full. And we're going to be full for the next, 6 months. So you're on for wheel, wide, and rear assignment. Good luck. Sorry. you know? So I didn't run across any devious shenanigans stuff. I really didn't. I ran across a lot of administrative people who were like completely out of touch. It's kind of like Doge is, working really hard to lean out the federal government right now. But back then there was like this entire unbelievable administrative state that existed in the Department of the Army and in the medical establishments, these transition centers and all this stuff, that was a challenge. That was a real challenge. And I found myself frustrated with like the promotion system, not so much when I got to SF. It was a little bit more clear cut, leaner chain of command, right? But in big Army, it was frustrating because I had a sergeant who would hand me my NCO evaluation report and a crayon and say, here, write your own NCO ER. And I ran into that stuff a lot in just regular Army, and I couldn't stand it, and I couldn't wait to get away from it. It was interesting, to be, let's say, a top 1% performer in the unit everywhere I'd been, and then get to selection, right? And I'm coming from Fort Campbell, right, from the 101st, and now I'm in selection like on the first day, and I'm looking around, and it's like, damn, man, look at this,
Everybody's
82nd
tall.
guys right there, and
Yeah,
there's a Navy
yeah.
SEAL right there, and there's a Army, there's a whole group of Rangers, Black Berets back then, over there, and then I'm just like this nug with a PC cap and well-worn boots. It was humbling to be in the midst of all these high-speed, low-drag dudes, and coming from Fort Campbell, I was just a guy, I was nobody, and yeah, but to pass some dude with a Ranger regiment that was a Ranger regiment dude, and he's passed out on the side of the road on the last day, on the last road march, with his Ranger pudding, like kind of dribbling up from here to his mouth and his spoon, and he's passed out with his feet up doing the rucksack flop, and he's dead asleep. And you pass him and you just like, give me your soul, you're mine now. It's pretty cool. Sorry.
Yeah, I know what you mean. We had like 430 ish. My selection in September, massive, just a mass amount of people. And everybody looks tough, when you're there, and
Yeah.
you're not thinking about yourself. You're just looking at everybody else because you can't see you. You're just like, oh, these,
Yeah.
how am I going to compete against that? It was my second time through, so I knew exactly what was going to happen. 20% of the class failed the PT test, and then the runs, they'd knock people out, and then we'd get to land nav, and then half the class goes home after that. Um, was there any point in selection where you were a little worried, or did you have a pretty good handle on it when you were there?
Uh, it's difficult to say you have a handle on anything when you don't know what's going to happen, like from 1 minute to the next or from 1 hour to the next. What I was comfortable with was I had a very, very high level of fitness, and I was very confident in my own abilities. And I had trained before I got there a lot. I mean, I was out rucking on my own time. And, I had somebody explain it to me years later who had been cadre at SFAS, a good friend. And he said, look, man, and I saw it, and I'm sure you saw it. There's like this category of guy, super fast, right? Fleet-footed dude. Like he's running like 6-minute miles constantly, right? Lean, the body type, right? Lean, tallish, just like the marathon guy. Mm-hmm. And on those high cardio, runs and whatnot, these guys absolutely dominated. And so those guys would all be ahead of me because I wasn't that fleet-footed dude. I was a solid runner, but I was not that guy. And then you had the other guy. That was the dude that could put a ruck on and he could walk for a week straight and set world records. You know what I mean? Heavyweight ruck division. I mean, massive, muscular, strong. But he wasn't that fast. What he didn't want to do was run, right? He would run because he had to, but that wasn't his forte. He really was a ruck god. So that was that other type. And then there was these weirdos in the middle, average looking dudes like me. I think I was probably 175 pounds at the time. Very little body fat, fairly quick, strong rucker. I wasn't the first guy or the 10th guy, to complete any of these events that we were doing. But I was always in the top 10%. That was my thing. And while I was there, my strategy was, I just got to pass the guy in front of me. You know what I mean? I just got to pass the next dude. And that's all. And when I was in SFAS, I learned the meaning of the word Schadenfreude. You familiar with that one?
I don't have its definition here, no.
It's a brilliant German word. Schadenfreude means like damage or trauma or sorrow. And Freude means joy or happiness. So it's the joy at the misery of others. So the more the guys around me, the more that these badasses around me suffered, and the more miserable they got, and the more they bitched about their feet, and that made me stronger. I cannot explain possibly why that was, but it was just filling my tank, baby, every day.
I forgot about that because I had the same thing going on. I loved it when other people were having a shitty time.
Oh, dude, I mean, like the formations got smaller and smaller and smaller. And, I was standing in the first day next to some dude whose roster number was 221. I was 222. And then 2 days later, I'm standing next to a dude whose roster number is 183. And then I'm standing next to a dude whose roster number is 105. And then I'm standing next to a dude whose roster number is 69. You know what I mean? So as the formation got smaller and smaller and smaller, I think I got stronger and stronger. I did.
Yeah.
I really did. And I don't know. I don't know. There's probably something about that in the, in the handbook of irregular psychology or something like that. I don't know. But I gained power by knowing that I was besting that. Maybe I was gaining confidence, really. See that, look, I'm still here. Holy crap, I'm still here. I'm still here. Yeah, that sucked, but I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here, you know?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, you gain
yeah.
confidence the further you go, and then you get to a point where you keep winning, and that just builds and builds and builds and builds. That's how it was for me. Once I got through selection, I I was like, okay, yeah, there's no failing past this point.
Should
Selection
have been.
was, it was kind of just a speed bump, and then the course. But I dumped everything into selection. I left no doubt. Going back my second time, I was going to die, or I was coming back with my flip that
Right?
said I could go to the Q course.
Abnormal
Because
level of commitment, right? Dude,
no,
I'd
there was
rather
no,
die than fail or quit.
I did not want to go back to my unit and do what the stupid shit that they were going to do had their coming up. So it was no, there was no quit, there was no fail, there was, especially knowing what I knew going in about what was going to come up, because the course hadn't changed in the couple months since I went to selection the first time and the second time. So yeah, there was no doubt I was not coming back and doing any stupid shit. But yeah, but that is a great feeling. And then yeah, I totally forgot about that when that feeling when other people are sucking and you just somehow keep getting stronger. I forgot about that feeling. It's kind of sadistic, isn't that?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. It wasn't that like watching them suffer made me happy per se. It made me stronger. You know, it's not like I didn't have empathy for that dude laying on the side of the road who was broke and cannot, drop on request or, voluntary withdrawal.
Oh yeah, nothing
Or I'm
against them.
watching these
But
guys like guy after guy after guy climb into the back of the truck to head back to Bragg as a failure or whatever, right? I felt for them. I did, but it wasn't about them. That's yesterday's news, man. That's chaff on the floor. That's moving on, right? Moving on. So
there's times in the course where it's about the team, right? Those are different times. Selection, they tell you when it's time to be a team, and that, but for the most part of the selection and the Q course, you're on your own. Like they tell you when you need to be a teammate.
but that doesn't relieve you of the onus that so like imagine your life is like a dartboard, right? Just a dartboard. And the bullseye is you. You're the guy in the center, or the gal in the center, whatever. And then there's these concentric rings going out to the outside. Well, just because you're in a team, which is this ring right here, just because you're working in this ring doesn't mean the bullseye is still not there. Your core responsibility is to the bullseye first. You can't participate meaningfully in any of the other rings around you until the bullseye is squared away. And so, yeah, it's good. It's nice. It's a small reprieve to do team events at SFAS. To me, you still got to put, you still got to pull your load. You still got to not bitch when it's hard. You still got to help a guy.
No, fuck that. I'm gonna bitch the whole time. That was my specialty, was complaining and performing at a top level. I was just as good at complaining as I was with performing. That was my thing.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. Maybe it was just like a denial of service type thing. I am not going to give the guy the walker, right? It's not an instructor, right? The evaluator guy, the walker who's with us. I am not going to give him the satisfaction of letting him know that I'm suffering.
Well, not to them, no, to the guys. Like yeah,
Still,
just that.
even
Yeah.
to them, you know, uh, and that was in, dude, my whole career, man. It wasn't like, this sucks. Like I was in the qualification course and we were doing Robin Sage, and it was cold, 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 cold. Like I don't remember Bragg ever being that cold. It was snow on the ground, and we were in a hasty ambush scenario, and I was cold, like, damn, this is almost an emergency. And so I kind of wiggled over to my buddy and said, dude, it's like 20 degrees, 10 degrees. I don't even know how cold it is out here, but all I have is a poncho liner, and all you have is a poncho liner. Sorry, dude, we need to snuggle under 2 poncho liners. And it was like, fuck yeah, dude, let's do it, man. So it wasn't like, I'm cold, but rather, hey, man, there's an opportunity for us both to stay warm here. Let's do this. Okay. You know what I mean? So there's keep your head in the solution and not in the bitch. I don't know how to explain it. You know?
It also depends on the guys you're around. Like I went through the course with this core group of dudes. It's like we all just fed off of each other, and we had this sarcastic attitude. But that's how a team is, right? You'll have
Yeah.
serious people on the team. You'll have
Yeah. Team
guys like me
culture.
that I am very unserious until it's time to be serious. Then we're on. All right, we got it.
Yes.
All right, let's do this. And then the moment it's over, I'm just telling jokes again and trying to lighten
Yes.
the mood and things. But that's how the team environment is. There's so many different personalities and
For
people
sure. Team
but
culture.
they'll still all accomplish the same thing in the end. They just go about it different ways. It's just
Yeah.
crazy.
I
But
really
I was in the
enjoyed.
pool. Yeah, I was in
I
the pool
enjoyed it.
today,
Okay.
and it's that the attitude. Like I didn't want to swim today, but I said, but then I said to myself, well, fuck, that sucks. Just do it anyway. But I'm going to complain about it in my head the whole time, like the whole time. And it's still, I got it done. And that's how it was in the military. Go
Sure.
on.
Yeah. And I think that there were days I didn't really want to engage. There were days I didn't feel like doing the run, swim, run. Of course, I'm human. But then when I wasn't able to find the overt motivation to do that for myself, I would do it because I didn't want to let my teammates down. You know, and like the worst thing that could ever happen, aside from like getting killed, would be to get caught with your drawers down and not be able to pull your weight when guys rely on you. You know what? Oh my God! You know, that's like the worst thing that could happen. And I would never get myself in a position where I would become a liability. No, no way, dude. That was like that was the nope. So
Yeah.
just
That's,
to be reliable and for others to trust and count on you. Yeah, go do
that
the
is
work.
impressed upon you.
Run.
You know, you're
Yeah,
always being assessed, right? And they say that all the time. And even in the group, you're being assessed and into your career. And, you know, from talking to guys doing this show and just the guys I know, really the most important thing to a lot of the people I talk about is what their teammates say about them now. You
yeah,
know, their reputation. That's what really means the most to them now, is that their buddies that they were in with still talking to them, still talking good about them. And that's one thing that I think we understood is your reputation follows you in group, and you better do everything to protect it. And that's where that no fail attitude kind of comes from. It's impressed upon us. That's one thing they do a good job of, is teaching us that. And if you don't understand it, you're usually gone right away.
yeah. I did have a one assignment that I was proud to do, but really in retrospect, I wish I'd have done a better job at it. After 110 and 3 years on an 18 there, I just remember walking down the street in Stuttgart and on base, and the battalion CSM came up to me and he goes, "You speak German, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." "What's your rating?" 3-3. But that's I'm I'm fluent. I'm very conversational. I had a lot of, you know, German friends and whatnot, and he said, "Hey, I got this assignment. It's they're looking for a medic to be assigned at the International Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol School in Weingarten, and that's south of Stuttgart by about 90 minutes. It would be a consecutive overseas tour, uh, but you know, it's an interesting assignment, and you'll get credit for a SWIC tour." Which I was like, "Ooh, okay, now we're talking," because you know how that goes, right? Get a couple years of team time, and then, bam. there you go, back to Bragg. You're working at, at Med Lab or who knows, on some committee somewhere. And I was like, wow, okay. And he said, it's, so here, I'm going to send you down there TDY as a guest instructor. It's a NATO special ops training institution, and see how you like it. And I did. And I had a great time. It was a schoolhouse, very small place. It was international soft, but the heavy lift was, British SAS and American SF. And we had a 7-man detachment down there, all German speakers. And then there was the international wing, which was, it was Greek, it was German, it was Dutch, it was Danish. I mean, we had all the NATO SOF were represented down there to some degree. Either it was one liaison officer or maybe it was 3 or 4 guys, but they had a very small, very tight international training committee down there, community, and they were teaching, survival, recognition. They were teaching. There was a med course, of course, and they had weapons training and things like that. So, and I had a great time. I really did. I liked working with a small group of Americans, and I liked being in that international community. As a guest instructor, I was down there, and that was tremendous. And I had a good time. And it was on a little tiny German Army base. What's that?
Did you get that one just because you were a 3-3 speaker, or was that something else behind the scenes there?
I think, honestly, it had a lot to do with the fact that the sergeant major and I were on the same sidewalk, and I guess my name had come up as one of the fluent guys. And I had a pretty good reputation. I think I did. That for him to actually, corner me on the sidewalk and say, you, and that's where reputation comes in, right? Hardworking guy, I was in good shape. I worked hard, and all the things that the teams had gone through, I had gone through, and so anyways, so I ended up at ILRPS as an instructor, and I did a good job for him. I did as an instructor, but in my personal life, I had a lot of things that were going wrong, as often happens with SF guys. You're climbing your way professionally up, and you doing a good job, but there's this stuff that's happening, like, how it goes, ex-wives and this. Oh God, there was just so much drama going on that, back in the States, and there was all this, I won't call it interference, but I'll just say that there were a lot of stressors that were coming from outside of my military lane. And, ex-wife and kid, my baby girl was no longer a baby anymore. And I'm trying to see how can I see her, and visit. And I'm over here, they're in the States, and, and my, just the constraints and the features of my personal life were creeping into my professional life, and it was making my professional life and my personal life start to become kind of unmanageable. And I started drinking, because I just couldn't cope with it all. I wasn't on a tactical ODA, so it was like, it's not like, I'm not hurting anybody, but that was a hard go for me, and I wasn't performing at my absolute best. There was, I think, some question as to my reliability from my teammates because of that unmanageability in my personal life. It was a struggle, and I know everyone goes through it, and I managed to get through it. But no, I think my point of bringing it up is that reputation does matter, but you have to also recognize that the humanity of who we are, right? We're people, and life's terms aren't always what we want, and they can impact us. But if you just muddle through, one foot in front of the other, do the drudge work, man, you can get through it. That was a brilliant assignment, and I did okay. I did okay. I left on good terms, but I sure as shit could have done a lot better there. I really could have.
Life,
I didn't humiliate
especially
myself or anything. I wasn't performing at my usual level.
life, especially as a green suitor, right, creeps in. Not, it doesn't creep in. It's often sacrificed and pushed to the side because the military life is your whole life. There's no clocking out and going home and picking it up in the morning. It's a 24-hour gig to where your personal life kind of becomes this. I say, guys, people will even sacrifice it to the fourth or the fifth priority in their life over a lot of things in the team life in SF. A lot of things will come first. And everybody, I wouldn't say everybody because there's exceptions, but everybody that goes into that life of special operations has to make a sacrifice, and they choose more often than not that team life over what they had. And when they don't want to deal with their personal feelings or their emotions about anything, that the store will always sell you more alcohol. But just constant, they will not tell you no. That guy, and the guy knows your name, and he'll see you tomorrow. They'll always be there.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's a choice, right? We make choices. Um, Harkening back to that excellent advice that I got back in the day about not managing people, but rather managing expectations. You know, my first marriage came to an abrupt end, not necessarily because I was SF, but it was a factor. You know, I'd married a German girl, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm going back to Germany." She was like, "What? I don't want to go back to Germany. I just left there." I didn't marry you for you. I married you because you get me to the States, and that's when like everything like fell apart. Uh, but harkening back to managing expectations, I got married a second time. I did, right after 9/11. And I told her, this is what I do. I am not going to stop doing what I do for you. Love you, want to be with you, but this is what I do. And if you're okay with that and what that all means, then okay. All right, we can do that. So we're humans. We're people. We're humans. It's a choice. I knew guys who made choices. I knew guys who were like, you know what? This is becoming too hard on my marriage. And I'm not watching my kids grow up. I'm missing out on all these treasured memories that I want to be part of. So, you know, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the service, or, you know, you know, so they make a choice. And I respect that. I respected it back then. Mourned they're leaving a little bit, you know, but gotta respect it.
Yeah, everything is a choice, and we make the choice that we feel is right at the time, based on all the information we have. I think, what did Chris Williams say on his? He said, undefined expectations are premeditated. It's like, if what did he say? It was really clever for this moment right here. But if you don't clearly define your expectations, then you're setting the person up or people up
Failure.
for failure in the end. But he said it much better than I did. But his show is like the number 3 in the world, so I'll catch up to him eventually.
I found that to be relevant all my life, even with my children. You know, if the expectation isn't clear, then I'm failing as a leader. You know, when I had a whole civilian career after the service. Again, if you don't set the expectation, give them, coach, counsel, give them the tools to be successful, evaluate performance in writing, then you're doing them a disservice. because you're not professionally developing them. You're that's mismanagement. What a waste of ultimate resource, which is people. Too bad. The opportunity cost of not doing it is incredibly steep. Which is like, just anecdotally, it's, while this whole thing with Doge is going on, you have the CEO of these very, very high functioning companies, very high functioning, is now in the administration looking hard at one of the most antiquated dinosaur bureaucracies we've ever had. And to watch this collision happen, it's almost funny. I laugh a lot about it, because it's the crash of two different worlds, and you just got to watch this thing fly apart, Anyways.
Yeah, but Elon is right there at the edge of technology, right? How many years in reality do you think what year is the United States government in? We're talking about a 40-year separation, I think, and you've got two generations trying to, because you saw some of the systems we had in the military or ways of tracking things and forms and stuff and the way we did stuff. I mean, it's a good 40 years behind the technology curve.
So I had the great privilege to work for a defense contract company after I was retired. And they were doing ops and maintenance for some of the IT infrastructure at the Pentagon and National Guard Bureau and some other places. And so I was in leadership of that program, and I had an opportunity to see really the state of our IT systems, at least. And yes, very, very far behind, very far behind. But, a lot of compartmentalization. I understand that. But, to get anything done took forever. To make changes took forever. To upgrade anything was so challenging. And even sometimes just to get people on the phone was incredibly difficult. And so, you have these very advanced thinkers looking, from the 30,000 foot down on this decaying IT system and the data it tracks and how they tracks it. It's no wonder these guys are able to go through an agency in a day or two and tear it apart and pull out all the fraud, waste, and abuse. It's so glaringly obvious,
I think it's even, more simple than that. And I say this to people, the government and the military can do a lot of things, but they're only good at one thing, and that's killing people, whether it's foreign or domestic. That's the only thing they're good at, killing people, and everything else is way down on the list.
No,
we can go to war at the drop of a hat, but God forbid if you needed to submit a timesheet request.
Yeah, I think that you're familiar with the concept of opportunity cost, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of our failings are manifested in opportunity cost. Let's say, for example, we decide that, we're not going to upgrade our IT systems to modern standards, data lakes and whatever else. We're going to keep the old system, and we're just going to do the minimum just to keep it hobbling along. Okay. But the opportunity cost of not doing that is something that is exponential, right? Look, if you could put your money in bank A and make 10% interest, or you could put it in bank B and make 11% interest, but you choose to keep your money over here because you're comfortable with that and you've known the teller for 25 years and you're friends. You're throwing 1% away every year, every year, every year. And that adds up. It adds up, it adds up, it adds up. So I think that when Doge says we saved $40 billion at the Treasury Department, and I'm thinking like, you couldn't even put enough zeros on what the opportunity cost was, of what you might have done with that, or what you should have done with that. You know what I mean? And so much harder to appraise, but I believe that's the real loss, is what we haven't done. The opportunities that we haven't taken. To lift people up out of the streets, for example. Could we do more for real support for veterans? Real support for the homeless, or real support for poverty, or had we spent that money wisely 30 years ago, where would we be today?
Well, you've seen that's what the government does, is the opportunities there, and they'll take the other avenue. I mean, look at some things in history like Katrina, right? They knew those levees were going to fail, but they kicked it down the road. I don't know. Everything has to have a nexus event, and maybe this is one, and people see, hey, there's better ways we can spend our money and focus our attention. And then it's never too late to, I don't know, maybe it is sometimes too late, but it's never too late to be who you could have been.
Sure.
Right. So
now, that was another thing that I discovered about, one of the ways to hedge opportunity cost is performance improvement, right? If you have an aggressive performance improvement program in your organization, like we did in SF, dude, I mean, if something went down and this, that, whatever, we'd go do an exercise, or we would just do some immediate action drills, or whatever. We're doing something as a team. When we're done, we do a hot wash. We talk about it. You did this, you did that. What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? What did you do? How can we do this shit better? Well, actually, if we'd have sent a dude around that way, you know what I mean? We'd have had better interlocking fields of fire. Or. It's not that, the expectation isn't perfection. It's progress. It's improvement, constant improvement. And to have built into the team, built into how we operate, and the trust that we share with each other to tell the truth. Don't get all butthurt about somebody said you did something stupid. It's not about that. It's about be humble, be willing to learn, speak up when it's time, shut up when it's not time, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. We really need to build this in to the government. We need to build it in everywhere we can. If you look at high functioning companies, they have amazing quality programs, right? The quality assurance and, quality control to make sure that standards are being met. Where can we make things better, faster, cheaper, leaner, and more efficient? And that is a high functioning process that the government hasn't had in a long time. And I'm really very happy to see it coming in.
The problem's always people, though, right? You can start off with even if you start off with a perfect system and everyone agrees, eventually if you play the telephone game, it's going to change, 20 iterations down the road. And as the people that were there in the beginning, they're not going to be there at the end. So yeah, what's the solution to get around that? Because there's you had our unit, and then there's units above our unit where they're really good at that, right? There's no tolerance for bullshit. But the more publicized something becomes, or easier to get into, and the government encapsulates everything in the country, the bigger something gets, the easier it is to slowly change over time. And you don't have that quick reaction. And you get a lot of pushback, you get a lot of everything there. That's what in business, not everybody gets that tier one experience at the tier 5 level.
That's true. But nonetheless, it's a leadership task. It happens, it can happen and should happen literally at every level. I'm not talking about just soft or anything like that. I'm just talking like federal government, SpaceX, they have this performance improvement built in at every level. And that's the expectation. That infrastructure is there. And it allows the organization to become much more adaptive and more nimble and able to appropriately manage change when it happens. And whether it's, tech development, AI is coming online and all that stuff, okay, that's fine. But as an organization, we're much more nimble if we have these performance improvement infrastructure in place. So, and I know I'm talking about, oh yeah, hey man, we got a suggestion box.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a suggestion box. It's cool. It's not about that. Anyways.
Well, constantly improve your fighting position, right? That's what it's all about. Or enact the change even after you've left the position. We did skip over, because you've had throughout your career several major worldwide events. We skipped over the second one. You just kind of glossed over it, which was Kuwait. Another major worldwide event that you participated in. So you got fall of the Berlin Wall, and then a couple years later, you got the invasion of Kuwait and the kicking out of Saddam Hussein's army. What part and impact did that have on your life?
Well, obviously, it was my first war, my first real combat zone. And being in the 101st at the time, I was just another nug in formation, standing where they told us to stand, do what they said, load what they said, get on the airplane, get off the airplane, drink water, So, being in the conventional army did not give me the opportunity to be very inventive in my thinking or in my, but it was a useful experience. It really was to see big army at war. It was my first combat zone. It was the first inkling that I got that, for example, big army is different in a war than it is in garrison. It was the first time I ever saw that. For example, if things needed to get done in a war zone, they got done right away. It was like, where did all the bureaucracy go? I don't know. We could get things. We could request things and things showed up. It was my first time in the Middle East. Hotter than hell. Understatement of the day. Saudi Arabia in August, or was it September? October. I don't remember when we got there. I think it was October. But
hot time of year.
Yeah, it was hot, and we turned up for hot. We didn't realize how cold it was going to get in January. Not prepared for that. We didn't even have.
When we're talking cold, because I learned going through basic and AIT and being stationed at Fort Sill, if it was 110 during the day and it was 95 at night, you thought you were going to freeze to death.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't about the actual temperature. It was about the range, like what was the high to the low. And I think in southern Iraq in January, the high to the low was like 50 degrees or something. It was crazy. But it did actually hail on us a time or two. And, I was surprised at the desert and affiliated climate, all of that. That was a really powerful learning curve for me as a young guy. That was one of the first times when I really, really started to, I had already understood that when I was in Germany and it was snowing and it was cold, okay, climate, there's an operational impact on soldiers when the weather is tough. But the Middle East took it to like a whole other level. Work rest cycles, a lot of a lot of those things that they talk about at PLDC or whatever they call that, WLC now, those things that they talk about in leadership schools about work rest cycle and, sustain the troops and all that sort of stuff. That's real, as we know. Now, having been, through Afghanistan and Iraq a lot of years, working in the Middle East. But those sorts of, Ranger Handbook things really matter. and it was a different war. I mean, we didn't have, there was no internet. Write a letter, my parents were incredibly supportive. They used to mail me these. You remember those little cameras that came in like little box, a little camera?
Wind up
yeah,
ones?
Zip, zip, zip,
Yeah.
zip, click,
Oh, yeah.
zip, zip, zip. So they sent me a whole bunch of those. And so unlike the rest of my career, the Gulf War, the Desert Shield, Desert Storm is probably photographically one of the best documented things I ever did in my military career. I had a steady flow of cameras coming in. I would take the pictures and stuff them in the thing and mail them back. And I didn't see any of those pictures until I got back. And there's some funny, interesting, really quite good stuff in there. And so I'm thankful to my parents for making that happen, because like with a lot of things that happened later, I wish I would have taken more pictures. I wish I would have, before iPhones came and before, smartphones, I should say, you had to actually get a camera and buy like a roll of 35 millimeter film or whatever, or 110 or whatever. And you had to take pictures, and then you had to go get it developed and all this other stuff. And it wasn't so simple. It's super simple now. But back then, I didn't have a lot of pictures of any of the stuff that I was doing. Most of it's kind of in my head, and I think that's, so Gulf War I was let's say, was well documented for me.
Yeah.
We did the job. I air assaulted into Iraq on D-Day, and, set up a giant gas station deep inside Iraq, just south of Nasiriyah. And, we were ready to project combat power with helicopters from the 101st. From there, we could have reached Baghdad from there. And, we took out a light infantry battalion on the way in of Iraqis, and, is my first show. And we did good. We did good.
So that winds up, and you're there as a brigade-sized element or as a division?
We were the division. Yeah.
Whole thing. Wow.
Yeah, I was a forward observer assigned to Bravo, 1st at 327. First chalk, first lift of the division. Alpha Company and Bravo Company went first. So we were the first ones to cross the Flot and the first ones to land in Iraq. So we did a good job. Proud of what we did. And
probably never do it again.
What's that?
Probably never do it again.
Not like that. The powers that be, I guess, General Schwarzkopf moved the timeline up the last minute. We were like fight at night guys, right? We're going to go air assault in at night. Nope. Wheels up, 6 a.m., landing at broad daylight. Never thought I'd see that. Hell, didn't even know we were being shot at till the helicopters lifted off. Because, you can hear anything.
Sometimes you want to give up the tactical advantage and spice things up.
I don't know.
So you guys are done there. You pull up chocks, take off, come back as a division. And you've done deployments in SF, but what was it like coming back in a regular Army unit as a whole thing? Was it everybody kind of flapping each other on the back and telling how great we did as a unit, and then go to your 4-day and block leave?
That was a real time. Because I think from the time that we left, wheels up from the Middle East, wheels down at Fort Campbell, till we were on block leave was like 4 days. Literally 4 days from leaving the combat zone to being on block leave. And I went home to California to my parents. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of guidance on how to decompress. There wasn't anything about, there was nothing. It was like, hi, welcome, hey, and, there was a nice crowd for us when we landed at Fort Campbell. That was cool. And, my parents made kind of a big deal about me coming home on block leave. And, I went home and I had my dress uniform on, and I had my combat patch on there, and a couple of little ribbons, I was pretty stoked to go home. And they were very happy to have me. And, there were a lot of Vietnam vets in my father's psychosocial circle. And those guys and gals, they really, really went all out to make sure that we didn't get what they got when they came home. So, like, I'm not joking. Like, there was giant, excuse me, giant party at my parents' place. All the neighbors were there. A lot of veterans. When they picked me up from the airport, there was this like car procession that, went from the airport all the way down Main Street with this like welcome signs and all that stuff. It was very, 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 very nice what my family did, what, their friends, and then, the community at large was very welcoming. And it was wonderful. It was really wonderful time to come home. And, I didn't feel heroic per se, but I was very happy to be home. I could tell you that. Yeah, it was cool. They did a great job to make sure that we were well received.
Oh, excuse me. I mean, that's good to hear because you're only, you're 17 years removed from the end of Vietnam when you get home, right?
Home. Yep.
And so those guys, that generation, still young men still at this point, right? Vietnam veterans, and they did not have, it's indescribable, right? The difference from their generation to ours, or to mine, that's a huge gap. But even to yours, the difference of, because they came home to spat on and thrown at them, baby killers, all that.
Yeah, I think that the American public, I mean, bless their hearts, when I was in service or I was in uniform, I routinely had folks ask, say thank you for your service. I never felt, not at any point in my career, unappreciated or disparaged or, I did get spit on one time coming through the airport in San Francisco. A woman like walked up and spat in my face, like, and before I had a chance, like, even to like go, like, oh, really? There was like 4 people already on her. Other passengers who were like walking by were just like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? And she got arrested for that. It's the only time that I've ever even had like a sideways glance. I love my country and I love my countrymen. And I was proud to serve. And if I had to sacrifice, I would have cheerfully done it because these are my people, man. And they've always shown me love. Always. Just that one time. But the rest of the time, okay, go protest, burn your flag, all that sort of, yeah, I fought for your right to do that. But even when people were taking a knee, if you know what I mean, during that period of time, I didn't feel unsupported. I didn't. I don't think anybody had hate for me or for the military in general. I think that they were at war culturally with a whole lot of ideas and and chasing phantoms, honestly, most of them. And but I've never felt slighted or disrespected by my country, never, not even at the VA.
Oh, well, the VA's. Side note, one thing I learned really quickly as a veteran, right, is that the VA and the American military have never heard of one another when it comes to any sort of records or anything like that. I quickly got into you need a waiver from this guy. No, you need a waiver from this guy loop right when I got out. And that was crazy to me to just there's no crossover of information in these adjacent organizations.
uh, Again, opportunity cost, right? So I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole with the VA,
No,
but
no.
what I'm willing to say is that the VA would benefit greatly, not because it doesn't have staff who don't care. They have staff who care. They have, you know, but it is again just another dinosaur bureaucracy that is not embracing current tech. They're not embracing, performance improvement. It's they're struggling with a bunch of preventable issues, and you know, there's like for example, here I belong to the Walla Walla, Washington health system through the VA, but I live in Oregon, you know, and uh, so there are so many simple fixes for these administrative bungles that delay appointments, that delay procedures, or in some cases, life-saving procedures. Bungles and missed opportunities. And it could be fixed. It really could. I know it can be fixed. It just takes will. It takes the will
Well,
to do it.
let's just keep throwing money at the problem, and it'll eventually not fix itself, right?
Well, unfortunately, what I think they do is they lean on people who are in the system to fix the system.
We all know that works out
It doesn't work out.
pretty well.
The things
Um,
we see every day become invisible over time. You ever
oh,
see,
absolutely.
unless you're a sergeant major, then every pine cone on your lawn must be picked up, right? I'm just kidding. That was a joke.
Yeah, I got it. But I do get, well, you live long enough, you die the hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain, especially when Sergeant Major. But yeah, everything is a slow descent to hell. Nobody notices that, right? It's only the quick one that everybody notices. And then we have to adjust. You'll stay at a slightly shitty job for 40 years, but you won't stay at a really shitty job for one.
I've met some wonderful people in the VA. I have. Well-meaning, hardworking, also frustrated with the pace and the bureaucracy, the ineffective communications, antiquated records keeping systems, appointment systems, customer relation management, all need to be updated. I guess I've been lucky. I really think so. I have not had an encounter with the VA myself. I've heard the stories, of course, but I haven't had any issues myself. I would, yeah, okay, takes time to get my dude. What did I have to get? Welcome to being an old man. I had to have, uh, see, I'm showing my age right now.
Well, what I say about the VA is it is absolutely fantastic as long as there's nothing wrong with you.
Fair enough. Fair
No,
enough.
I haven't had any bad problems either.
I think
But
if I was the VA though, I mean, I would genuinely be interested in the fraud, waste, and abuse and I know this is probably very contentious, and there's going to be some haters, dude, over this statement right here. But there's a
Let's
lot
hear
of
it.
veterans soaking the system. There's a lot of veterans fraudulently taking money. I don't agree that, oh, a drill sergeant yelled at me. I have PTSD. I need to file a claim right away. Dude, I am very, very opinionated about the whole disability process, not the process, but like eligibility for it. The whole concept that's like, oh, the military broke me. Therefore, they must pay me forever. What? Dude, you were in the military for like 6 weeks, right? I when I was at the VA, I went to the VA down in Long Beach, California once, and I pulled into the parking lot, and I was a respectable civilian at the time, and I pulled in my,
You're not now.
my middle class car and my, you know, uh, not expensive but not cheap suit, because I had to take time off work to go to this appointment, and I went, and I remember seeing this Vietnam era guy, and he was wearing his Navy SEALs hat, or I don't remember what it was, Purple Heart, and all this other stuff, and he's wearing a jacket and all this patches, and he was wearing his DD-214 on his body, and he had a walker, struggling to get in the building, and so I even held the door open for him. Thank you, buddy. Vietnam guy. And he went off to wherever he was going. And so I went to my appointment, and I sat there, and I waited, and I did my thing. I went in, I had the conversations I needed to have, I had the blood work drawn, and then I left. And as I was walking out in the parking lot, there's that same dude carrying his walker with a Scooby-Doo step, because he had done his check-in, showed them all the stuff he wanted them to see, opened the trunk of his Cadillac, threw in his walker, Scooby-Dooed on over to the driver's side, and drove off. And I know.
No,
Oh, yeah.
I don't
And
believe
the
it.
more I looked, the more I saw that was going on. I saw it at the VA in San Francisco. I saw it the one in LA, the one, over the years when I go to the VA, I have seen it, a lot of it. I think somebody ought to look into that. Just saying. I know I'm going to get canceled now.
No,
Right? Every veteran
think,
group, like the VFW, oh, you're canceled, you're canceled, you're canceled. Look, I call it like I think there's a lot of that.
There are, are there soldiers on disability that don't deserve it? Yes. Are there many more soldiers that aren't on, that didn't never get their rating at all because they think they don't deserve it? Yes. I think that guys and gals need to take this system, because it's on paper, it's all black and white, and you can read it and figure it out and get your rating and everything set up. You need to take that seriously, because there's a lot of benefits to it. And just like any other system, you'll have people that take advantage of it, and then you'll have people that do the opposite, and they under advantage vocabulary. Anyway, they don't use it at all. So yeah, there's 100%. There's people abusing the system. There's also people that feel like they don't deserve anything for any of their time that they
been there, done that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, file a claim.
Syndrome.
That's a sign of weakness. No. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a hard sell to some folks. It is. It really is. Oh, I don't deserve it. Oh, I didn't. I know a guy who lost both his legs. Let him have it. I had a knee replacement, and 500 parachute jumps, or I have this, or I have that, and and concussions, and riding the bow of a Zodiac, dude. How many breaching charges did you struggle through? I mean, on and on and on. And nope, I'm okay. Green Beret, I ain't no pussy.
Yeah, that's the attitude, right? Fuck it, I'll just get it done. Just get it done.
It took me It took me a long time to file a claim. It did. And there was the whole, I don't know, you get back, it's like, there's war, and this guy did so much more, and this and that, he got killed, and and I'm okay, and guilt, and I could have done more. I had, you hear all these stories about a guy like Roy Benavides. He's a genuine hero, and we all know who he is. But well, I didn't meet that standard. You know what I mean? Well, that didn't happen to me like that or anything like that. But just the same, though, that's the standard. That's the guy. That's the thing that's in the moment. And my story is nothing compared to that. And take your pick. We have just Rolodexes of heroes in the special forces. We do, and it's like I'm nothing compared to those guys. You know what I mean? I'm a lesser known operator.
Oh, but I got a sign. This is right. So right here.
How's that for a plug, right?
I'm working on t-shirts, but
see,
yeah, that's one thing about our community, right? We were in this community.
Yeah,
we're in this community, but SF's a pretty small community compared to the rest of the regular Army. But we hold ourselves to this ridiculous standard up here. But then if you were to just take this out and put it over here and compare it to that, then you'd be like, oh, well. But then you get out and you're in the civilian world and you realize nobody fucking cares. Nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
No, it's just you. And the longer you were in on the front side, it takes you that much longer on the back side of being out to realize nobody fucking cares. Nobody gives a shit. Oh, you were in the service? Cool. Yeah, no, oh, that's great. Good. Thank you for your service. And then they just go off and you're the only one left ruminating about all the things you did or didn't do or didn't get. I wish I did this. I wish I did that. You're the only one stuck with that thought in the end.
Yeah. I mean, look who we compare ourselves to. Look who our heroes are. We're not the standard bearers for mediocrity. You know what I mean? I had this.
Well, the guy yesterday I talked to was at school when Nick Rowe was the commander.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's outstanding. I had a chance actually to meet Aaron Bank years ago before he died, and so I mean, our predecessors they set the standard for absolute excellence for us from the beginning, from the OSS through development of our own special operations community. Fantastic. So we have this rich heritage of extraordinary men and women to live up to, and it's part of our regimental identity, and it's hard to measure up. It's sometimes in my career I was like, man, I'm just trying to keep up with these guys, occasionally. It just depended on the team, but some teams are that good. I have this famously, there was a sign behind one of my team sergeants' desks, and it was just a printed piece of paper taped to the wall with 100-mile-an-hour tape, and in big letters it said, "I've upped my standards, so up yours."
Double entendre.
Yes. Dude. And that's another one of those sort of mantra things, about controlling expectations and upping standards. It helped me a lot after I retired. I've upped my standards, so up yours. and they would either think it was hilarious or they would be really butthurt and I'd be in trouble.
Yeah, you got to know your audience. You gotta not only manage expectations, but what audience you're expecting things from.
Yeah. When you first get out, you're a little tone deaf, a
little bit.
Talking to this, I don't know, to a coworker or something like that. And he's like, he's talking about just some banal, I took my car to get it washed and they got scratched. I was so pissed. It was like, oh, okay. gosh, that sucks. Geez, I'm sorry to hear that. It's like, dude, you know,
It
just
is tough to
it's
share experiences,
hard to
right?
relate. Hard to relate. That you're like, let's do this work. We get this knocked out. You know how we do. And they're looking at you like, dude, you better slow down. Dude, what are you trying to do? You're trying to make everybody look bad. No, I'm not. This is easy. All we got to do is no, oh, no, don't. Here comes the shop steward from the union. Nope. We have standards. You got to do what we're doing. Anyways, I'm kind of rambling there.
No, I've
Getting.
got you.
Uh,
I got you. I got your next segue here. If you want to,
well,
we've gone off deep on that one.
so I left active duty in 1999. At the International Long Range Reconnaissance School, they handed me this mission that they had picked up. They wanted an international humanitarian aid advisory course. Okay, brand new course. You got like 4 months to put it together, and I had some experience in Central Africa and a few other places, and I said, okay, I'll put this thing together. And so, not knowing what I didn't know, and this is very classic sort of SF guy, you just start making some phone calls and talking to people who knew stuff about it. And I wasn't calling military guys. I was literally doing just like straight call. I was cold calling these guys at like the World Food Program, at the UNHCR, at the International Committee of the Red Cross. I was calling these people and I'm like, look, I need to learn about. Can you tell me something about? No. And I was raising this interest. And we put together a course that was actually pretty great, where we had international special ops in the classroom. We had NGO workers, civil affairs. We had like big UN level planners and others all in the same room for a full week course. And it was terrific. It was absolutely fantastic because we had an opportunity for them to see us outside of their operational space, right? So, we'll call it neutral territory. We had special ops guys who were convinced that all these Birkenstock granola eating hippies over here, the do-gooders who don't know anything and are always in the way, to get this forum together, talk about stuff. And that worked out really, really well. And it's actually one of the things I'm actually most proud of in my years there, was to put together this course with a very good friend of mine, Andy Shepard. And we put together a course that was like really, for the time, one of a kind. And the relationships that were developed between, let's say, our soft guys and the civilian sector really came to, they reaped a lot of rewards in what was coming. So we had just come through Bosnia. Rwanda had just gone down. Kosovo was looming. There was all this stuff that was coming up, and it was going to keep coming up. And these guys and gals that had attended that course still like reaching out to me a couple of years later. Like, remember that stuff we talked about? Wow. Totally went down like that. I was able to pick up the phone. I was able to send an email to, Charlie, who's now over at, let's say, Direct Relief International. And we were able to do this and get that in the hands of those people. And we solved this problem that nobody could solve just because I knew a guy. It was fantastic. It was really useful. And that kept coming up. Even when I was in Afghanistan, those opportunities came up. The Germans had a clinic down there. It was a women's clinic in a underserved area. It was the only one of its kind. And the Germans had done a terrific job attending to the needs of the local ladies. And, but for big picture reasons, they were having to leave. And they didn't just want to walk away because the place was going to get stripped down and it would cease to exist. And they were unable to like figure out a way to keep it staffed. It was really kind of tragic. And so I was talking to a guy who was talking to a guy. I sent an email, and an NGO picked it up. They ran, and then I had a meeting in Kabul with this group, and they picked up the clinic. They kept it running. They staffed it, and it kept going. You know, so just these kinds of things. There are all these opportunities to do some good if you're willing to take an interest. You know, when I was an E7. You know, I was nobody. You know, but you know, we just pay attention. You know.
Yeah, we spoke earlier about, right, experience. No, the experience is not going to hurt you, right?
Not at all.
And that understanding of how the organization works or how other organizations work is just you know, you create these opportunities because you understand more of what's going on. Like you said earlier, that 30,000 foot view of things in your unit, and you can start to put together the spider web, you know, like an 18 Fox drawing the chart of everything. And but how do you force that into being the default, right?
So this particular instance, if I hadn't spoken German, it would have never happened because I became aware of the situation in the hallway in a German facility on a fire base, and they were talking about it in German. So that was the first one. Be proficient in the language. Second, take an interest in others. You know, one thing I learned at the International Long Range Reconnaissance School was that international SOF and other people and other armies, as you know, we in SOF, we really, really get it. That interoperability, building trust with others, you know, learning to collaborate, find common ground, you know, those sorts of things, care enough to listen to what their problems are or what their stated problems are. Give a shit, give 2 shits, give 3 shits, really. You know, okay, that's not my problem. No. Is it in the scope of my mission? No. Should I just walk away? Probably, but there's an opportunity here. And what is interesting is that the physician, you know, that was in the hallway talking about that, I came to know him several weeks later because he ended up having to treat one of our guys who got blown up downtown in Kabul. You know, like I had seen him before. So you never know how these things work out. But if you just keep your eyes and ears open, try to help out where you can, you know, help other people solve their problems, you know, was nothing on me. Dude, I sent like 2 emails, 2 phone calls, went downtown for a meeting. That's it. And, you know, for that, we were able to do some real good, you know. So, yeah, I think we're all stewards of our humanity, aren't we? You know?
Yeah, and it's nepotism is real. It's kind of all about who you know, and right, because
the network is really, really useful. But you know, it's in the process of doing all that. You know, it's entirely okay not to know, but be willing to like try and help figure it out.
Right. Yeah, figure it. Well, that's another trait, right? The ability to just figure it out and get it done, no matter what, it can overcome a lot of misgivings or lack of knowledge. But
so
I did want to go back a little bit.
Okay.
You had said, you know, you knew when you were going to be. We didn't get into how you got, you know, from signing in and Sergeant Major. So we go through selection, right? Yep. And you said you were going to be a Green Beret when you were 11 years old, or the decision had been made. What was it like going through the course and you went through and you're Delta, right? And then you get to that graduation and they're, at that time they're passing out the berets, and that was in the time of the tab. So what was it like accomplishing that goal all those years later? Was it everything you thought it could be up to that point?
It's a good question. I had a moment. I had a moment of genuine doubt. I did. I got to Fort Sam to the 300 Fox 1 course, which is the pre-course for the Deltas, for the medics at Fort Sam, Houston, Texas. And I think we had just taken our very first ever test, because, the medical course is academically incredibly rigorous. It had a fairly high attrition rate. And I hadn't been in school for a while, right? Now, several years. I hadn't studied much of anything, really, at least in the academic sense. But now I had books, and the first exam we ever took was medical terminology, which is that's rudimentary foundational information. If you want to be in medicine, you've got to know medical terminology. And I failed it. Bolo, awful, did horrible. And I sat down with my, the academic advisor, who was a AT Delta of many years. And he said, "You're not going to make it, man." Just like that. He said, "Nobody fails this test that has ever made it." And this is the first test. He said, "Dude, you're just not going to make it. Are you sure you don't just want to quit?" I said, "Quit?"
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
"No, sir, I'll try harder." So I quit goofing around, and actually, I didn't just study. I hooked up with a study group, and I hired a tutor to help me with dosage calculation, ratio and proportion, math problems. I just couldn't get my head around it for some reason. So I hired this guy to help me do the math, and then, all this. So I worked really hard, and I did med lab, and that was fabulous. I met Rush Limbaugh in med lab, because when we're doing our work there in the OR suites, the instructors were running Rush Limbaugh on radio the whole time. So you're doing your work, and you're doing your training, you're doing your lab work, and you're doing blood smears and spitting feces and all this stuff, and it's just Rush Limbaugh. So it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it immensely. It opened doors on the philosophy that really, the more I learned about medicine, the less I actually knew I knew.
Yeah.
Of all the fields to get into, I think that was the most daunting, is how much is out there, how much there is to know, how much I don't know. Wow. And it really created this sort of lifelong commitment to studying medicine. You can't ever stop, because everything's changing all the time.
Yeah.
And there's sustainment training to do, and off to ATLS and paramedic licensure and all this other stuff. So it really created in me, being a medic, the commitment to continuous study. And I have not stopped. I've never stopped. I still take classes at the university. I'm still learning. I'm still researching, so teaching myself new things. And, I've never sat back and not been studying something or reading something. And that's been really helpful. Graduating from the Q course. Yeah. Wow. It was almost surreal, really. I didn't think of it as the culmination of all that work. I think the most extraordinary thing about it is that my parents turned up. My parents are very supportive, of course, but they don't, they had never come to anything that I had ever done in the military. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Graduation from basic training, or, no. But my parents turned up at Fort Bragg for this. And up to that point, I think that's the only time I ever saw my dad cry. was when I graduated. And it was humbling, and it was just the beginning. It was just the beginning of so much more. I wish somebody would have, I wish someone was listening. I'm sure somebody on stage said, "This is the beginning of a great experience."
Oh, I think about that all the time. I have no idea what that person said up there.
I don't know. I'm sure they said it. I'm sure I didn't know. But like that opened the door to everything. It all started. Like, wow. Like a life I didn't deserve. A life I didn't think I'd earned. Hanging out with and working with guys that were better than me all the time. Most enriching experience, most fulfilling experience of my entire life. It's very difficult, now that I'm retired and, and I've had, a decade between me and the last time I meaningfully wore my beret. It's kind of a struggle to not let that. I mean, yeah, it was the glory days. It was wow, 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 wow. But I have to really work hard not to let it define who I am today. You know what I mean? It has got to be like the world's greatest springboard into, let's say, an above average citizen, a good boss, a good employee, a good human, a good man, a good father, a good husband, I have, I feel like I was given something incredibly powerful and incredibly valuable. And now I have to pay it back by not being a fucking douchebag, by being a good American, by supporting my government, whoever the fuck that is, by being, on time, on target, loving, listening, caring. I have a lot still to learn, but I gotta pay my dues, man. I gotta pay it all back. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
It's due, like rent is due every day. Once you get to that certain level, right? Because I think was he First Sergeant Alvarez said after he went to Ranger School, he said, every day I'm a Green Beret every day, or I pay dues, and rent is due every day, or something like that, and that continues on.
That's right.
But
the hardest thing,
as long as you
being,
yeah,
the hardest thing about being a Green Beret isn't getting the beret; it's earning the privilege to wear it every day. And that's true. That's true. But I'm out a decade, and I still feel like I have to earn it every day. Because, some people who know me know it. Not many, but a couple, and, and more importantly, it's not like I have to strive like, I gotta be that dude. No, I'm not doing it to sustain the reputation or to protect the regiment. But that's the man I am. It's the man I've become. The regiment helped me become that guy. The one my dad was pointing at in the room. That guy.
Do you feel like you that was the culmination of it, right? You became that guy your dad pointed out when you were 11?
Yes.
How's that feel?
It's a lot of responsibility. But yeah, of course, I'm satisfied. I became everything that I wanted to be when I grew up. Now I have other existential issues like, well, what the hell do I do now? To find your niche and to find your way through in the ambiguous world of the civilian sector is not so simple. But if you hold on to your values, performance improvement, setting expectations, patriotism, be true to yourself, stay on the bullseye, right? Focus on the bullseye. front side. The rest, I don't know. For some reason, the compass always just seems to point where I'm supposed to go. It just does.
Yeah, the universe will provide, right?
Do the next
Well,
indicated thing.
yeah.
It's really simple.
It's tough to do. Like what we did, and to do that level in special forces or any special operations unit, right? It's tough to get to, and it's tough to do. But you look back and go, oh, that was easy. Now that you're civilian, you're like, oh, this kind of sucks. And you look back and like, that was so easy. To perform at that high level was easy compared to, I don't know, whatever the fuck civilian world is.
And look,
You know,
it's been said, and I know it's cliche as hell, but if you want to win, surround yourself with winners. Okay. Did a lot of winning, for sure, with winners. And I was very comfortable being surrounded by winners. But when you retire, guess what?
yeah,
You're not. You are where you are. Oh, you're surrounded by whatever you're surrounded by. And they don't share your values. They don't share your commitment to excellence. They're not high performers. They are just, muddling through.
that's what's cool about this, right? I can just expand my network over these interviews here and just get everybody's story and still get around the community. That's what I think's real cool about this. But yeah, it is. Everybody spreads out, right?
Yeah, I like what you're doing. I think it's it's such a useful way to stay connected continuing to surround ourselves with winners. I have my SF friends that I stay in touch with, of course. Oh, excuse me. I had a cold a couple of days ago. Still working its way out, but yeah, I still have them, but and when I see them, which is very infrequently, it's like I saw them yesterday, for sure. But it does remind me that time is fleeting, and you pick your crowd, right? And I think I need to call. Oh, I think I need to call my brothers a little more frequently. I need to stay a little closer connected. Not that I feel disconnected or anything like that. I'm fine. But, there was nothing but positive. There's nothing but upside for staying connected and close to my teammates, for sure. It's easy to...
It's easy to say, "Oh, I'll do it tomorrow," right? Or not send a text, and then time goes by, and you realize you haven't spoken to the guys or people that you were in for quite a while, and then it gets that much easier to push it further and further down. No, I know what you mean there. I get it sometimes. Like, oh man, I haven't talked to so and so. I haven't done this. And it's forced. That's another thing though. When you're out, you're the boss, right? And you got to tell yourself what to do, and that kind of sucks. 'Cause if I was good at telling myself what to do, I'd be in Trump's with Doge right now. Fuck, figuring that shit out. No, but I mean, you had all these, and then you said you left active duty service in '99, and obviously you went back and went through the first part of global war on terror, and you did all of these crazy things, and you right at the beginning before we started, you said you wanted to, like, just the breadth of your assignments, right? And I had said earlier, we throw out these crazy things as if they're just, these little bits of trivia of all these crazy places we went and these crazy things we do that nobody can understand. Did you accomplish everything that you wanted to do when you were in? And did you realize how awesome it was while you were doing it?
I was able to. So after I left in '99, I had a Belgian entomologist that I had worked with, and in the humanitarian aid course, and he said, "You need to get out." He says, "You're too. Look at you. You're like a E6, and nobody's going to listen to you. You know, you're a very smart guy, and you're operating way above your rank. You really need to get out, because until you become an officer, nobody's really going to pay attention to what you're saying. And you know, I had just given a speech at the 1998 NATO Flight Surgeons Conference. I think I was the only enlisted guy on the speaker list, talking about, you know, the use of special operations forces in the initial assessment of a humanitarian crisis. And I followed a nice lady from the CDC, you know, and I had like 5 generals sitting in front of me in the audience, and I was an E6 speaking at, you know, at that level. And so I took Dr. Lair's good advice. I left when my contract ended in 99. I stayed in 19th Group, you know, in National Guard, SF, because I wanted to stay current. My goal was just to get my degree. Then I could go get commissioned. Then I could go back to SF as an officer. That was the plan. And yeah, I did well. I liked 19th Group a lot, actually. You know, it was not just a 1 weekend a month type National Guard job, not in any way, shape, or form. These guys had to maintain the same standards as active duty. They had to jump, they had to dive, they had to do everything that we had done, except they had a very compressed time to do it, which was cool, because it's like, well, you could look at some National Guard units where they would go in and they would have a donut and a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, and then maybe get around to having a formation.
Yeah.
But with 19th Group, nope. Dude, hit the ground, run it. And, you know, these guys are rocking and diving and jumping. You know, they were doing it. They were hitting the range, and I really liked the 19th Group guys, because, you know, they were cops and firefighters and plumbers and electricians and school teachers and you know, counter narcotics guys and DEA agents and some, you know, all kinds of these. It wasn't just that they brought the special forces classic MOSs to the game. They brought whole other skill sets. You know, some of these guys had worked gang units, you know, because if you're going to operate in Afghanistan, it's really useful to have somebody who understands gang networking and all that sort of stuff, because they're all gangsters anyways, right? So, you know,
some warlords, a couple in there.
Yeah, for sure. You know, organized crime task force guys, you know. Okay, same, you know, like we would have a meeting with a guy, and the guy I was just talking about, but we'd have a meeting with a couple of the local Afghan administrators, and he'd be like, "That guy's a gangster, man. Just look at him, man. I mean, look at what he said, what he did. I'm talking to the interpreters, telling me this. He's like, straight up gangster. That dude's a thug." So, you know, and then we would discover that he was right. You know, he was totally into the counter. He was all into the narco terror stuff. So, anyways, I digress. I like 19th Group a lot because of the additional skill sets. Because these guys had families, you know, it was they had a healthier work-life balance than the active duty dudes, for sure, because they didn't have the same up tempo, right? Well, that was all about to change, because I got out in 99, 9/11 happened in 2001. I had just barely finished my second year of college, and boop, 9/11 went down. And surprise, I'm sorry, what? 19th Group is getting mobilized? Really? Like it just happened, you know, like we were on orders very quickly. And I have friends in first group who are pissed. Like, you got to be shitting me. 19th Group is in Afghanistan in 2002, and we haven't gone anywhere yet. Like, they were furious. So, but you know, that's that nearsightedness I was talking about, right? You don't have the 30,000-foot view. They were still engaging U.S. PACOM in a very meaningful way. You can't just drop what you're doing to go do that. Better to get the National Guard guys on it. So, you know, I was with one of the first teams into the Helmand province. Yeah, it was great to be there. It's one of those things, you know. this notification from the USASOC surgeon's office. It said, look, hey, man, you haven't done your whatever, SOFMSP, which is Special Operations Forces Medical Sustainment Program.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's been more than 2 years. You haven't, you have to do it or you're not deployable. I'm like, dude, my team is like literally walking out the door and you guys hand me these orders to brag, right? God, you gotta be kidding me. So my team is infilling and I'm going to Fort Bragg to do a required sustainment training. All right.
And this is in '02?
Yeah, this is late 02.
So your team
So
leaves
let's
and you
say
got to go
maybe
do a
October.
refresher training?
Maybe September, I think, of 02. And yeah. So I go to Fort Bragg and I do the, ATLS and all this other stuff. And, pediatric life support, da-da-da-da-da. And now I'm done with the course. I'm at Bragg. My team is downrange. I got an email from my team sergeants, like, there's like 3 of them in a row. Like, first one, boop, hey, man, we're in whatever. We're in Bagram. Boop, second one, we're in Kabul. Boop, third one, we're in Kandahar. I'm like, God damn it, He's like, dude, I don't know what you got to do, but you need to get here. And I had like nothing. All I had was my MOB orders, and my brain.
Yeah.
So I just
go over to the
used
Air
my
Force
MOB
and
orders.
try.
Yes. Yeah. Went over to the Air Force at Pope and said, and they said, can't help you. But here's a voucher. Get on a civilian airplane and fly to Frankfurt, and we'll hook you up from there. Okay. Must have moved to Frankfurt. Emailed the team sergeant. Oh, in Frankfurt. Okay. And then, so then I just like literally walked out on the flight line in Frankfurt to the passenger terminal, told them who I was. They were like, hey, go hook up with this guy, on the flight line. And I talked to this guy, and he's like, yeah, man, C-17's leaving in like 20 minutes. Get on. Signed up for the manifest. Boop, get on a plane, flying off to Kazakhstan. Hopped on another plane into Bagram. This is all just like high-fiving dudes.
Yeah.
I got to get, and then, I got, from Bagram by convoy. I mean, not Bagram. Yeah. From Bagram to Kabul by convoy, sitting in the back of a truck. And then from Kabul, took off in a helicopter, a CH-47, headed to Kandahar and got shot down. And they got really shot up pretty badly. Ended up limping back to, I think we circled back to Bagram, actually. And then I walked over and I saw Task Force 160. And I was like, dude, I need to talk to those guys. Fuck these guys. So I went over there and they were like, yep, let's go, man. Threw me on this bird, straight to Kandahar, no issues. Linked up with the team in Kandahar. And like, they were like,
Just got after it.
yeah, man. Like, they were like, hey, glad you're here. Go find us a truck. So this, I love it, man. Just, dude, we need a gun. We need another gun truck. Because, we rented a couple of piece of shit Toyotas from the local guys. And, we're going out the gate in like 2 days. Let's go. We're going down to Helmand province. Okay. So I go over to the flight line, and there's a bunch of Marine Corps dudes working on a helicopter over there, and they got a bunch of trucks. And I went down there and I said, look, hey, I see you guys can weld. I'm going to try and get my hands on a truck. I want to know, can you guys weld a machine gun pedal to the frame so that, I can have, I want to put a crew served weapon up on top of this truck. Probably a Toyota. They're like, oh, dude, take one of our trucks. I love war. War is so great. You can just get stuff done. Marine Corps guys were like, here, take the truck. It was like, an old Chevy or something like that. It was all camouflage, junky truck. And then they welded the machine gun pedal. The only thing I had to do was sign for the actual mount that goes in the pedal. They did a great job. They welded it to the frame, got everything set, took it out, test fired it, brought it back. They were like, here you go, bro. Get some for us. Dude, tell me when that ever
And
works. When does that ever
what's
happen in garrison?
what's the amount of days from okay, you go over to Pope to okay, I've got the truck ready to roll out into combat. How many days was that?
3 days.
3 days.
Yeah.
The regular Army mind cannot comprehend that, all of that, right? That's such a abstract way of thinking, right? Compared to your armored cav days.
Yeah, yeah. No, that the Army, I'm sure some folks probably would have figured it out, but I had somewhere to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'll be goddamned if anybody's going to keep me from getting to my team. That's where I'm meant to be. And so look, if you just mature and you talk to people and you kind of let them know who you are, they're willing to help. And
Yeah.
I had, and it's war, right? It's on, dude. Everybody's like pitching in. Anything we can do, you need this, you need that. Dude, look, I'm going to take care of you. Anything you need, let me know. Okay. And, if you're a war fighter, it's good to be a war fighter. Till it's not. You
get it done, right? Like I said earlier, that's the one thing we're very good at. We will jump through hoops to kill people, and then everything else is kind of secondary.
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to think about that. I was very motivated like that way in the beginning. By the time I got to be a team sergeant, I started to realize it, like, and after a couple of tours, dude, if we're smoking, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a time to stack bodies. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. But in the course of just doing, UW or even if you're doing SID with the Afghan National Army or the police guys or whatever, you have to at some point realize, like, dude, if we're killing people, maybe we're not quite doing this right? If we're just happenstancically having to fight, shoot guys and stuff, like, maybe we're not doing this right. Because, as soon as you kill a guy, his brother's got to get involved. And his brother. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Now, if we could find a way to do this without having to smoke a bunch of fools, that might be the better way to go about it. And I had to learn that from guys who were smarter than me in SF, who really understood that quite well and were very successful getting the job done and getting the mission accomplished, especially if they didn't have to kill anybody. It's great.
Well, that's our core mission, right?
Exactly.
Is to not do that.
You don't have to do that. But yeah,
work yourself out of a job.
Don't get me wrong. There's a time to do direct action. Of course, we know this. I mean, the ensuing years in Iraq taught us much about, how many, how what the op tempo there looked like and all of that. But we're in a much more ambiguous environment that Afghanistan represented at the time. This is very early on. Like, for example, if you're having a dialogue with some of the local Afghan guys and you say, it's clearly a poppy field full of poppies right here, right? But we're not here for that. I can see you guys are growing poppies. I don't care. I'm not here for that. We're here for the foreign fighters. We're here for the Al-Qaeda guys. Because, if you walk in and go like, oh, where's the Taliban guys? It's like, what are you even saying? Like, well, we're here for the Taliban. We're here for the Taliban. See the policeman over there? He was Taliban. See the school teachers over there? They were Taliban. I mean, dude, we were all Taliban for, that's, so you have to be really careful about what you're saying and what you're asking for, and actually a little bit about how you're thinking of this. Because, like I said, there was a cop standing on in a traffic circle in Kabul when the Soviets were there, and he was a Russian supporter. And then after the Soviets went away, he was a Mujahideen guy, and then after that, he was a Taliban dude, and then he, you know what I mean? So, but truly, he's just a cop, and that's what he does, and he's been standing in the same traffic circle since the beginning. Yeah. So the point is, you have to be really kind of thoughtful and utilize your interpreters really well, because I very stupidly made a comment at one point, like, I was trying to build rapport with this Afghan National Army guy, And I said, yeah, we really supported. We were very impressed. We were very impressed with what the Mujahideen, did against the Russians and against the Soviets. You must be very proud. And my interpreter said, are you sure you want me to say that? And I said, yeah. I'm trying to make friends here. He goes, are you sure you want me to say that? I'm like, yeah, go ahead and tell him. And he said it. And the guy across from me, he just looked at me like, kind of. And I said, what's wrong? And he says, my interpreter, he said, you realize that the Mujahideen destroyed this country after the Soviets left, fighting each other. That's why that's why Kabul is in such a ruinous state. These guys destroyed everything. They're not the good guys. And I was like, oh, crap. This is how we learn, though, right?
You're not going to make that mistake again.
Nope. Know your history. And that goes back to that spoken tradition I was talking about. A lot of these countries and a lot of these people, they're not in that state of distraction like we are. They have a rich tradition of talking to each other, eating together, meeting together. And, if they recall history better than we do, and they talk about it like it happened yesterday. I think we got to remember that. They're not in touch with some of the same things that we are. So, anyhow. Well, sorry.
No, you're good. So all those experiences and then different conflicts and all over the world and everything, looking back, like what was war? 62.
62. I did 10 in 1 year. It was great.
All paid for. All just smiles and experience.
God, I have to pay it all back.
What?
Glorious.
So to me, I never went to combat, right? And it's one of those things I'll never get over, but for my own reasons. And that's just the way I feel. Looking back, what was war to you? Was it that part of that Green Beret experience, or is it the way to test yourself, or was it just another one of the many things that you had to do?
Good question. What was it? War is war. I mean, it's all those things that there's sort of cliche that you hear about. There's ambiguity. There's smoke of things. I mean, it's doing the job. It's doing the job. I don't know. I just remember stepping off the helicopter in Kandahar, or in Bagram, my first time into Afghanistan. And I remember stepping out, and the instant my foot hit the ground, I thought, here we go again. And I didn't know it at the time, but there was going to be, here we go again. Here we go again. Just, I don't know. Do your job. It just depends, it depends on where you are. It depends on what's going on. It depends on the enemy activities. It depends on, it depends on, are you there during fighting season or not? My last tour was not fighting season. There was nothing going on, so it's just luck of the draw. Some guys, some of my friends went over there and like seriously slung lead, like from day one through, till exfil. And other guys just, they went over there and they were outside the wire. They were doing, They were doing the op. They were doing the thing. Dry hole, dry well, and it just, there wasn't anything to do. It just complete crapshoot. It seems like, So it was different every time. Constraints are different every time. I was very lucky, and very lucky. I'm not a fatalist, but you know, uh, it's yeah,
Sometimes that's what it is, right? It's luck. Uh,
it's all luck. You can't
Running
spend a
into
lot of time,
somebody.
dude. You can't burn a lot of calories like fretting over, you know, young 18-year-old kid from the fourth ID steps out onto the balcony, lights a cigarette, and gets fucking smoked. You know, well, you definitely don't want to be that guy, but I don't know. I had a friend of mine in SAS explain to me. Uh, they have a technique just for when they were in Northern Ireland. They call it hard target, right? It's a lifestyle. It's a don't stand still for very long. It's like this way of conducting yourself when you're in a hostile area. And I took that to heart before I ever got to Afghanistan. So, dude, follow the rules. Do, you know, those things that they say in basic training to do, noise, light, litter, discipline, all that stuff. Even the most rudimentary 11 bang bang stuff counts. It does. And I think that you can change your destiny from highly unlucky to highly lucky. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Well, it goes right back down to, why are we the most professional unit or whatever, right? The bullshit they say, because we're just better at the basics, or we're supposed to be the master of the basics. If you're really fucking good at the basics, then you're probably going to look like you're lucky.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're working with foreign troops, specifically like Afghan National Army guys, or, Hilla SWAT or something like that, in Al Hilla, you have to, hit 7-8, dude. That's a great place to start, and if you got that down, then you can move on to the next thing, and then the next thing, then the next thing. Oh, okay. Thanks, honey. My wife is showing me notes.
I got 5 questions I ask everybody, and then we'll get out here for the day. How's that sound?
Sounds good, my friend. I don't know.
We touched on
completely bored of me by now. This guy's so full of shit.
I fucking love this, man. This is my own project. It's my own show. I get to meet all these cool people that did all this cool shit,
and you can edit out all that coughing I just did. God damn, man.
I'm gonna learn how to do that today too. All right, we touched on this one earlier. I think you'll have a good. What is your response to thank you for your service?
You're welcome.
Nice and simple.
Yeah. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Thank you for thanking me? Yeah, I think that. It is in my head. Like, thanks a lot for caring enough to thank me. I'm all jazzed because you said thank you. It doesn't bother me at all. I like it when it happens. It doesn't happen very often, much anymore, just occasionally. But here's the thing. If I'm in the, store and, you see a World War II vet or Vietnam vet, and, they got that hat on, I'll thank them for their service, for sure. Whatever that was like, I don't know, but I make a point to say thank you for your service, even though I'm a veteran myself. It's respect.
The one time, you see everybody's hats, but I was at the commissary one time, and I'm like kind of looking, and I walk up to this guy. It's like, you really got 3 CIBs? And he goes, yep. It's like, can we just talk for a few minutes about some shit? And he loved it. I was like, I never met anybody, 3 CIBs. There's only 333 people that have ever gotten it, and this was one of them. And so I
Wow.
was like, I talked to that guy. I was like, that was just cool. It's one of those celebrities just like this that nobody's ever fucking heard of.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, well, him, thank you for your service, man. That's fucking, he has some stories.
You know, I don't judge people. You've seen it. The Jeep rolling down the road with a complete 201 file on the back glass and stickers and all
Proud
that
of his
shit.
service. He's proud of his service.
Hey man, whatever, dude. I don't have any of that stuff on my cars. I don't. Nothing. And it's not that I'm not proud of any of that or my history, heritage. I am very proud of all that, but I'm really comfortable being the gray man. You know, I am a quiet professional. I'm actually shocked that I'm actually here talking to you on this podcast. This is crazy. The first time I ever done anything like this, and I like to keep to myself, and I like people to know me for me. Oh, he's that nice guy. He lives up on the hillside there. So but I don't judge
A
people.
lot of guys are like that. They're just quiet and they just want to stay that way. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking about yourself every once in a while. And then especially with some of the stuff that I'm trying to do, and you got to, or otherwise, if you're not making any noise, nobody's going to hear you.
Yeah.
So, it's counterintuitive. It feels weird to do,
I thought that, I thought I'd be interested in interacting with other guys and gals, combat veterans. And so I joined a local VFW thinking that was going to be something that was for me. And so, I got my little Snoopy hat and I put a SF tab, CIB, CMB on there. And I went to a meeting and they were looking at me like I had a penis growing out of my forehead. And I was like, what's the deal? And I discovered in relatively short order that while I respect those individuals very much, that wasn't the place for me. And a lot of them were, they were qualified for the VFW and they're very nice people, but they weren't, they had been in a combat zone, but they hadn't been in combat. They hadn't, it was just hard to talk to them, and there was so much ego and all this swagger. I'm like, no, not for me.
Yeah. At least you tried. At least you tried.
Oh, I was in it for like 3 years. I painted a house and all this stuff, and that was useful, and I enjoyed that. And I walked in a couple of parades, but really, at the end of the day, I'm the gray. I'm the gray man. I'm more comfortable being the gray man. So podcast, go figure.
What's the one characteristic that sets operators apart from conventional forces?
The one? Whoa. I don't know that I would call it a characteristic. Oh, can we circle back to that one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Circle back. Yeah.
What's the one moment of your career that you wish you could go back and relive?
My time at the Long Range Reconnaissance School.
That was it. Was that the pinnacle where it all came together?
No, that's the one I could have done better.
Really?
Yeah, I would want to go back and do that better. I don't want to relive a pinnacle. I want to go back and redo the fuck up.
That's interesting. 2 nights in a row is a similar, different situation, but similar answer. That's interesting. What would you change? Or would you just carry the decisions you would make now back to do it there?
I'd stay sober.
Oh,
dude, I was, man, I was living with, the British and the Germans and I was not prepared for the professional level of drinking that was going on that place. And, which was fine. But when you combine that with the mismanagement of my personal life during that particular period, that was a recipe for disaster for me. I wish I could have done that part over again. I did okay, and I didn't ruin my reputation or anything like that. I wish I had done better. I think there was a lot of room for improvement on that one. Yeah.
I know what you mean there. That alcohol is not. There's some social benefits, but definitely not professional. Definitely, it's a sliding scale, slippery slope.
Well,
Um,
if going back to another team sergeant, here we go. He said to me, we in the special forces, we spend a huge amount of time taking care of our bodies. We maintain our equipment in a very, very high state of readiness. We take care of each other. We do all this maintenance on our weapons, our optics, and our dive gear, our parachutes, we take care of all of our stuff. But if your brain is your greatest weapon, what the fuck have you done for your brain lately? You need to go maintain your brain. If you don't, you're worthless to me and to the rest. To the team, you're worthless to yourself. And really, it's going back to taking care of what's on the bullseye, right? It's the bullseye piece. I don't think SF guys or anybody in the military should be ashamed to reach out to talk to somebody or to say, like, fuck, man, I'm just not managing shit right now. Or I've got way too much on my plate. Or I married the wrong stripper. Whatever your issue is, I think it's really useful to do the things you got to do to maintain your greatest weapon. No shame in that. Shame on you if you don't. I mean, really, would you roll out on an op with an unzeroed weapon? You know what I mean? Or with an engine on your vehicle that you haven't even checked the oil on? They're just things that we do that you have to do to be ready to roll out the door and fucking dominate. And then if you don't do it, that's unacceptable. So
we do neglect ourselves.
Yeah.
Paramount to everything else. We'll take care of everything else first, and then leave ourselves last.
And if you have issues, and we all do, nobody's special. We all do. Whatever your issue is, you ain't never going to get it. You're not going to reach through the layer of crap. You're not going to deal with this until you get through the layer of crap between you and it, which is usually alcohol, pills, whatever your thing is, whatever you're self-medicating with, or whatever you're using to dull down, ignore, whatever that is, until you get rid of this shit, you're never going to get into this stuff down here. And that's fact. So if you're struggling with drug and alcohol, you got to stop, man, because nothing's going to get better until that shit's gone. That's a fact.
No, I'm 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away from 1 year sober.
Good for you.
So
good for you.
So
I'm fully supportive. Yeah, I quit in 2008. Yeah, and I quit for gosh, 8 years, I think. It wasn't like I was trying to be sober. I just didn't drink. 8 years. And then I went to Christmas party and I quit again. It's not in my life right now. It's not, it hasn't been, not in a long time. I don't really think about it, actually.
I had to stop. Yeah. So now I don't drink. All right, back to the one characteristic that sets operators apart.
Oh, I don't know. There's a lot of similarity between a high-functioning infantry team or squad or platoon even and an ODA. Characteristics are all very similar. You can do a lot with very little. But if you don't have, I'm going to say leadership. Leadership. Absolutely leadership. Because, dude, I would put the junior E6 on an A team up against any regular Army infantry company commander any day. any day. I think it's leadership. Taking an interest in other people's things, like that women's clinic in the Helmond that we were able to salvage. That's just leadership, dude. That's all that is. Leaders care. They do, all those be, no, do, oh, all that stuff. It's just leadership.
At the end of the day.
It's all leadership. Yeah. Or if you want to see how badly things can go, see a lack of leadership.
Talk about, yeah. I think I know what you're going to say, but what is the best piece of advice you received during your career?
It was those three. Those three. Don't manage people, manage expectations. I've upped my standards, so up yours. And what's the other one? Oh, I've upped my standards. Yeah. I don't know. I can't remember the other one. I'll have to go back through the recording and see.
All right, last one. It's real simple. What were you afraid of then in the service, and what are you afraid of now?
I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid in the sense of fearful. But if I was to say that when I was on the teams, there was something I worried about, I wanted to be reliably a good teammate. That was like, I wanted to make sure I kept up. I didn't want to drop. I didn't want to be the dude to ever drop the ball. I didn't want to be the dude who was last. I never wanted to be. I wanted to be positively contributing all the time and not that guy. I didn't want to be that guy. After the military, fear. I'm really afraid of anything. Like I said, my life is a dartboard. I'm on the bullseye. My wife is the next ring out. My kids, the next ring after that. My next door neighbors, with whom I collaborate quite a lot, they're the next ring. Then my local town of 2,200 people, that's the next ring. And then somewhere is the county. And so, as you can tell, Hamas and Benjamin Netanyahu are on some ring that's so far outside of things that I can control, I don't even sweat it. I keep it in perspective. And when I can't get my head around what's going on with those outer rings, I shrink my world down as required. And then eventually, when things are just so bad or whatever, I'm just really focusing on me, my wife, and my kids, and my neighbors, and my town. I can't control anything beyond that. I don't, if Elon Musk is doing what he was hired to do, Trump was doing what he was elected to do, they're doing it, man. And there's nothing I can do, say, or otherwise that's going to affect or impact that in any way, shape, or form. So I don't worry about it.
Control what you can.
Dude, yeah,
don't
control
worry
the
about what you
controllables.
can't.
There's another good one.
Yeah.
Control the controllables. Anyways.
Alex, I appreciate you coming on. You got anything for me?
Oh, this has been really fun, and I'm so grateful that you asked me to come on, and I've really enjoyed our conversation immensely, and it's a rare thing to be able to talk about this stuff, and when it just doesn't come up, then that's okay, and that doesn't really come up.
Anytime, man. I'm here.
All right, thanks again, Nick.
Bye, everybody.